Jesus Christ, dude, you're savage.
We make good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes. Advanced philosophy memes. We make good memes. Advanced philosophy memes. Base fucking memes. Shoutouts to Andreas, Deacon, Boy Scott, Pedro, and everyone else that engages on my posts, etc. Keep it up, man. You'll get there someday. And everyone else, great memes.
Well, the timeline seems to be restoring itself. She's already.
Vindicated! I'm selfish! I am right! Sorry, I
can't understand that.
I think he was going to be vindicated by Dashboard Confessional.
That's right.
We all knew. We all knew. Okay. There was a very Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield kind of.
I thought that was Tobey Maguire.
Is it? Isn't vindicated from the Andrew? No, I'm wrong.
I think it was Spider-Man.
I think
2.
Spider-Man 3 probably,
3,
maybe 2,
I don't
but
The
3 was
original
one that he was all
Spider-Man
emo looking. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yo, is there any shout outs you guys want to give to audience members? I just want to give a shout out to Difficult Pete because they messaged me. They were saying, "Are you terrorist on Andreas's show?" I was like, "Yeah, that's me." I guess on Facebook, I'm just a lot more like of an abrasive personality than I am on camera. Maybe
Isn't that weird? I feel like that's one of the things I've noticed. Everyone's really different when they're smiling than they are digitally. But I just saw this was also funny that when I was trying to log the StreamYard in, it says, warning, you're going to lose access to your X account unless you reconnect it in 27,448 days, which is like pretty impressive. That's like 75 years to use StreamYard before re-upping. But that warning will be there forever, I guess. Like for 75 years, it'll just always be there. It's kind of weird.
It's gonna keep reminding you the countdown is in effect.
Do you think there's ever going to be a podcast that'll last like 100 years?
Yeah, for sure. Rick and
Yeah,
Morty
yeah.
was like style.
Automated podcasts, you know?
Yeah, I think it's the next inevitability is like the way Simpsons lasted for so long. They can probably make a generative podcast. Also, isn't that already kind of a thing with C-SPAN, or like don't they have like a thing? Charlie Rose. I mean, how long did Johnny Carson go on for? That was like 40 years or something like that. So I could easily imagine that it could outdo it. All you need is a person that lives that long, or a show that's not destined to be about that person. Like
Bill O'Reilly. We need Bill O'Reilly back.
Oh, by the way, Seth's here. Good to see you, Seth. How are you feeling?
Getting better. I was a little bit under the weather, but I'm hanging in there. Nice to see
I
everyone.
felt bad asking that. I was like, he just told me he wasn't feeling well earlier. That's like the wrong. Am I making you lie? Yeah, but he's feeling better than he was feeling because
I'm
he's
just
here with us.
just here to avenge Peanut the squirrel. I think we need to have a insurrection in honor of Peanut.
Along with Harambe.
Yeah, I
He's
mean,
up there with
Not just
Harambe.
Peanut.
and the raccoon. I feel like Rocky Raccoon, Fred the Raccoon, didn't get sung enough. Really, like that was the thing. What do you
Avenge
think
Peanut.
about? Everyone
Seize the
loves a
capital.
squirrel. Everyone loves a squirrel, but not everyone loves the raccoon. What's up with that? Why is it that like a squirrel? Is it the furrier tail? Like, what is it about the squirrel that's so much more approachable?
I think they're less aggressive.
Racism.
I think it's
I think it's-
Who said racism?
Literally racism. Literally.
That's so fun.
Better than
Speciesism.
raccoons.
Speciesism. Well, they make better pets than raccoons, all in all, because raccoons, like the wild ones, are more dangerous, more prone to rabies and stuff.
Do they get in
Hey,
and
did
out
you
of
guys
things
hear that
easily?
a squirrel ran across the stage at Kamala Harris's concessions?
Yeah, yeah. To me, it's like an omen.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up. So what do you
I'm
think
not
about
joking.
that?
Like they should like do January 6th, Albany, the capital of New York. Like this has to stop. They're not. You can do violent crime and they let you out of jail immediately, and then they come to your house with guns and execute your pet squirrel. There should be a
Well,
January 6th on Albany.
So I had an
Squirrels work
idea.
pretty good.
So what I want to do this year is I want to get all of our friends like, so you know how they make those Civil War reenactments? Have you seen these before?
Mm-hmm.
So what I was thinking is we get a bunch of our friends who do the Civil War reenactments and we do a January 6th reenactment. Right? No, I mean think about it. Think about it, because I mean, and Trump can be there, and he can even, and we could have people who were actually alive on January 6th, like in full regalia, like in rocking
shaman.
chairs. Like, come over here, boys
And
and
the guy
girls,
who's
and let me
playing
tell
Ray
you.
Epps is in like a mascot costume with a big like effigy head.
I mean, right? Like, I feel like that's the only solution to this at this point, is we probably have to take the time to
No,
show
everyone's
people.
gonna want to be the shaman though.
Yeah, that's the other thing. You can imagine like the made in China shaman hats that'll be sold there.
I
and
call
everything.
zip tie guy.
I've actually never been to a reenactment. Are they fun?
They're the best. I
Yeah.
hate to have a bias, but I've never been to a reenactment that wasn't the best. They're always fun. They're
Take
amazing.
mushrooms, you go to a reenactment, you know?
Dude, and that's the other thing. They're not all the people who go to reenactment are, you'd think, like obsessed with.
War.
They're weird people that are interested in like camping and making food on a fire grill. Like, check out these ash cakes that the Scottish would have brought over here. And yeah, definitely people are doing drugs at these, I'll admit, because a lot of the time the battles themselves people would go to and have a picnic. That was the whole point, right?
It's kind of like a medieval festival kind of thing, except
Yeah, I've seen that.
different
I've seen
period,
like
you know?
Japanese samurai reenactments, but it's not like this, like where they got.
Yeah, this is incredible.
This is like
incredible.
this is LARPing for what, like 1800s?
And I wonder about
Mhm.
this too, because people act like LARPing is a new thing, but how far back does war reenactment go? I think LARPing goes back hundreds of years, actually. The Prussians did LARPing for reenactments of famous battles. Famous battles for parades, that's like a millennia old idea. But in America, we really own it, right?
Well, when
Like,
it's- when
it's
it's
crazy, these troops.
When it's done professionally, they call it like war games, right?
But I think that
War
the
games
more
are just what militaries do. Military actually perform war games constantly. I don't know,
Yeah.
professionally, you mean the
the
same?
more
Well,
there's I think the more that they try to like reinforce like the reenactment, the story, it's a way to shape the perception of the events back then, of how it must have been and how the wars won and how people behaved. I mean, that's why it's the same reason we have movies about war and this stuff. It's to shape the perception of the heroes and the villains and all
I mean, for
Right.
training purposes, there's also like specific battles in history where they're like, oh, this is when the 5th Battalion of this regiment or whatever was like here in this battle, and this is what we did, and this is what they did, and this is how they went. So your guys are going to learn those tactics by, I guess, doing it.
Well, but also remember the South Park where he's like, "We could win this time." I think that's the other thing, is you can change. In a lot of ways, you can change history through reenactments, because you change the interpretation of how a battle went or what was really going on that day. I think that's a more legitimate thing than people realize. Like, you
The
can
South
easily
will win this time.
I mean, in a lot of ways, think about the Civil
Yeah.
War. I think Michael Moore did a thing on this at the South. I mean, in a lot of ways, the Dixiecrats and the Democrats that evolved out of the Jacksonian Democrats in the South did win the war, right? I mean, in the same way that international military-industrial complex corporations created by the Nazis continue to exist today after the Third Reich. They won. Right, they won, even though Germany was destroyed in the process of their corporations winning. Right, the same.
Man in the
thing
Heights
with the
Castle
South.
kind of thing.
The South might have, like, all the innocent people that were destroyed. I'm sorry, but yeah, like, some corporations got away with a lot of money, right? The Banana Republics.
You think
and
in
the Knights of the
Japan
Golden
they still
Circle.
have like hillbillies that have like the rising sun flag with the sun, the rising sun will rise once again, and do like reenactments of
I don't know about the hillbilly part, but they definitely do have militaristic.
Dude, that's so messed up. We took the
Japanese.
sunbeams
Rural.
off their flag. You're like, you can't have these anymore. Just take those away. That's better.
They definitely do have a huge population of Japanese that are not in cities, and it's growing.
Well,
Oh, go
the
ahead.
equivalent is like the whole thing was like in Japan, there was like their version of like a civil war would be their empirical line, their empirical rule. But then there's a shogunate rule, which was like, it was basically all the warlords at odds with the emperor, because the emperor was supposedly like this deified lord of all of Japan. But the military warlords ruled their own province, and without them, the emperor was basically like powerless. So they had their own civil war. They were like, you know, there was, and
The Meiji
ultimately,
Revolution.
yeah, the empire won. They fucking won.
And then swordsmen weren't allowed to carry swords anymore. That's basically
Yep, it's basically like the
Second
Union
Amendment of
forces.
Japan.
It's like the
It's
Union
funny
forces
because-
winning.
You know, it's like retroactively they look at these characters and then you can see the different perception. Like Nobunaga, he's regarded as a demon in some stories, and he's regarded as a hero in others, even a deity in others. So it's interesting that, I don't know, they change the perception, and then you have these sort of like subcultures that form that have different mythos for the characters. And they worship them differently. Like people still look at Nobunaga as like a uniter of Japan, and he was a shogunate, you know.
Yeah, it killed many people or caused the deaths of like many people.
For
But
sure.
you know, death was a
Warlords. Warlords
death-
been a war, you know.
Death. It's also just, I think it's just something about like Japanese culture. Like death was
They
just
could
they were
change
so
it like
close
we
to
did to like defense lords, like Department of Defense. I'm a defense lord now.
Yeah.
You know, like we used to have the Department of War, then they made it Department of Never
Imagine
mind,
imagine
still
if
fun, though.
America was a kingdom, like an actual established kingdom during like feudal times, like instead of just being in Europe, like let's say the Americas were
The states
also-
weren't united.
Yeah.
Corporate
or like-
shogunates, you know, it's not that far off.
That's, I
Like
mean, have you lived in Peru? That's exactly what the Yakuza
Oh, yeah, you're right.
did, right?
There's
Like
the South
That's the
Americas,
thing.
yeah.
I feel like the Japan in the Edo period really expanded into Brazil. 1 million, 2 million people in Brazil are essentially Japanese. The Japanese are now considering them more Japanese than they used to, because a lot of them are trying harder to maintain Japanese cultural ideas than Japan was for a long time. So it's almost like a time capsule in some ways of Japanese culture.
huh. Is that how Japan like made it to South America, like culturally? Like that's why like so much of South America
I mean,
was Dragon Ball.
if you look into it, it's wild. Yeah.
Hey,
like
hey,
the
Jesus
amount of-
went to Japan, okay? Apparently.
I think, but also
Jesus.
you got to think about this also. Spanish and Portuguese culture into Japan, like the word sushime and ceviche are connected concepts, right? And it's so there's a really wildly tied in the Portuguese Spanish Catholic culture, and then back again, Japanese taking over Peru, all across Chile. There are major families that run Brazil. I mean, but Peru, it was the Fujimura families, right? So the Yakuza, several major, the Dragon Clan or Dragon Triad that includes families from Sony.
the Jade Dragon. Jade Tiger.
There's like particular, yeah,
Nintendo.
like literally. I mean, it makes sense. Instead of the Christopher clan, named after the son of Christ, named after the dragon, right? Like that's actually a thing. So you have this Green Dragon clan, and then they're in the South American power hemisphere. Even if Japan is going through these laws that say, Japan, you can't do this, you can't have a military. What does that mean to the Yakuza? Like, not a lot. They can still have corporations that have boats, that have weapons, they can exist. So big deal. Actually, all you did was delegitimize the monopoly of violence in the hands of the emperor. Same thing that happened to Germany, right? So it's kind of funny when we're like, oh, Japan and Germany after the war, look how it ended up for them. Yeah, for the states. Yeah, for the average taxpayer, you know, but not for like the elite. Never for the elite.
I was wondering how jujitsu made its way over there.
Yo, there've been British ships going to Japan since at least like the 1400s, probably like maybe a couple of 100 years earlier, you know.
True, and you know, even during the Edo period, the Dutch, right? And so the Dutch is a whole. That's a thing to consider also, is the Dutch and the Dutch East Indies Trading Company, and they're non-Christian. I mean, they're secular and open to Jewish background. Like they're far more diverse. The Dutch were all over the world, seeing all different kinds of people, including the people that were isolating from each other. So there's a really interesting culture that emerges just because of that, and you can see that in like Van Gogh's paintings. Even Van Gogh is influenced by Japanese paintings a century before you get anime.
I could see that.
I mean, yeah, it's a pretty awesome.
You know what? And
fusion,
also,
you know?
one could argue like Japan kind of needed that Western religious influence, because up until then there were like two main influences, like ideologies that were like battling each other. There was, I mean, if you're educated enough to even follow like any kind of path, there was either the warrior path, and that had like certain emotional framework implications, you know, and then there was the Buddhist path, you know, which was, they were at odds with each other a lot of the time. Like you can't be both like a Buddhist monk and a killing machine, you know, like it's
Try
just,
me. Yeah, no, for sure.
What about Shintoism?
well, this is what happens. Like is when a samurai gets old, they manage to like survive their shit, and then they retire, and then they decide to be a recluse. So then at that point, apparently it's not frowned upon for like a warrior to seek the Buddhist path or whatever, which makes sense, I guess. It's like you're too old to kill people, so yeah, go ahead, be a fucking Buddhist. Why not?
Yeah, but Buddhists could be violent to an extent. I mean, Buddhism coming out of Hinduism, there's a reason why the Buddhist warriors are maintaining martial arts styles that include channeling like the iron fists and everything, the Reiki. Yeah.
So what happens was Japan goes through cycles of peacetime, wartime, peacetime, wartime. Now during wartime, that's when you get all the tales of heroism manifesting. That's when you get all the apparently men of great value, as they would call it in all the books, like actual like real deal samurai.
Hard times, strong men.
Yeah. Then during peacetime, you would have all like the posers. You would have, and they said even the monks, like
Kabuki?
the monks didn't even display courage anymore. And you need courage to chase out evil spirits, that keep returning and recurring. Yeah, demons.
Yeah, that's why they're fighting, right?
So when they
right.
Yeah, so during peace times, when the monks turned out more like docile and gentle, because that's their virtue that they were pursuing, a lot of the samurai admonished that, and they were like, "That's not good."
Is it like a sort of paladin?
I guess, yeah.
Jack, were you in the background the whole time? Jack, how you doing, Jack? Good to see you, Jack. What's up? Oh, he's still frozen. Well, you're frozen,
Yeah,
Kurt.
I thought we had blackjack.
Kurt is about to perform Riverdance for us.
Kurt's just stumbling around.
What's up, bro? What do you think, Kurt? Oh wait,
Looks like he's taking a piss.
There he is. I see him.
What's up?
Hey. All right. Do you want a new question, or do you want to comment on things you heard us talking about?
New question?
Yeah, I figured, and the answer is easy. Okay, so Chris posted this earlier. Joe Biden would have won.
Oh no!
Is this not true? And
he did it once.
Is anyone pretending that's not true?
I mean,
true,
Donald
right?
Trump beats women in elections.
No, it's one of those. It's like one of those things. Like it's true, but you shouldn't say it out loud. And I just
no, but
say
like
it out loud.
and I'm asking you, Kurt, because you're from Pennsylvania, so you know more than anything if this is true.
We voted Trump. That's for sure. There's a great book. There's a great conceptual book out there. I don't know if I talked about it much, but yeah, it's like called like the Keys to the White House or whatever. It's like reverse predicted like all but 2 elections in American history. I think anyone that looks as familiar with that, they pretty much predicted a Trump victory this time around, no matter who it was. There actually was a lot of scandal with Biden early on in this term, like the whole exit out of exiting the Middle East didn't go so well. That was at least the principal like scandal at the start of his his tenure.
Look how much like Never Trump affects your face. Look how much MAGA Jill is chill. MAGA Jill chill. Never Trump needs a bump. I don't know if that's the way you remember it.
Jeez.
Now we need happiness and good vibes. Like I don't know, like just part of the reaction today. It was like, the meme, show me on the doll where this person hurt you. I don't know. I think we could have a lot more unity in certain ways, but I think people are focusing on all the wrong issues when it comes to the election process and how we elect people. Like if you don't like the person that just got in, like you probably... Yeah, part of your issue is with democracy. I mean, I'm kind of with you. I mean, democracy has a lot of
Clearly, democracy is at fault here. I mean, let all these people choose for themselves. What do you think is going to happen?
They ruined democracy.
It's exactly. People are just if the average person is stupid. If the average person is stupid, then the net outcome of democracy will be stupid.
You sound like Jack.
I'm
right
not
now.
saying that is the case right now.
Well, a lot of people thought they were too smart to vote. They were just like, "Oh, I'm not going to participate in this system that's obviously corrupted."
Yeah, I'm above it.
Like, how many people even actually voted?
I'm just
like,
well, we'll get
my
to that.
inaction is
people are either
my genius.
People are either too stupid or too emotional. Like the smart people are too emotional to be reasonable in this whole argument.
Like, I hate that I'm from Northern California, but I'll give you the non-metric terminology for how many people voted, and it was hella. It was hella people voting.
Yeah.
It was
Speaking
hella.
personally, I absolutely wouldn't have
And you-
voted for
and
Trump.
although
I voted
a lot
for
of black
RFK
voters-
Jr.,
Wait, hold on, wait.
Elon
Let,
Musk.
let Seth finish.
Like I wouldn't have voted just for Trump at all because I think Trump is pretty dumb and just like Mr. Magoo lucks into doing things right occasionally, and sometimes
Totally.
you get a 2020 by accident or
He got
bombing
less than he got
Syria.
last time,
But
right?
I was brought up by Nicole Shanahan, who I think is genius and brilliant and beautiful, and RFK Jr. and Elon Musk, like the whole pirate ship of people surrounding Trump. And like honestly, though, even on the
100%.
JRE podcast, Trump said that Mike Pompeo is a great guy and he would have him again. It's like somebody has to like just take the reins away from Trump. He's like an old
Smack
dumb
that
guy.
guy. Get him
You
to
know,
figure out
like
what
an
he's
old
talking
dumb guy
about.
surrounded by really smart guys, but like people can't
He
genuflect. to
wasn't
him and
really
like,
saying, Joe, he wasn't really saying Mike Pompeo. He was throwing Mike Pompeo under the bus while trying to be like, what's the word?
ecumenical,
like,
but no, not at all. He was saying he's a great guy. He threw
He
John
was
Bolton
literally
under the bus.
blaming. He was blaming. Literally, he was naming names. Literally blaming Mike Pompeo for not releasing the JFK files without
Yeah.
actually saying it outright. That's
I
what he
think
was
that's
doing.
true too. I think he was giving a
No,
nod to
not
his
at all,
name, but
because
not for
Trump
that
would
reason.
never admit that somebody pulled one over on him. Trump is like, this was my decision in the end. Mike Pompeo told me, please don't do it, and he's a great guy, so I didn't. I think your read on that is totally backwards. But that's
It's
my opinion.
literally
All right, well, then
idiocracy, right?
Why
Colin?
would he? Why would he literally go on to say that I'm going to release it anyways?
Yo,
And he's
Colin,
saying
Colin.
that people like Mike Pompeo made him not do it. I'm just
Because
saying.
now,
like,
because
he
he's still
literally
the boss,
named
and now
names.
he changed
He
his
embarrassed
mind.
the guy. He
No,
embarrassed
I
the
don't
guy.
Well,
That's
you guys,
I
you
think
guys
he's
know.
going to try to employ him again.
Do you guys know who Gene Hill is?
No.
Okay, so Gene Hill, Norma Jean Lawless, February 11th, 1931. She was associated with the JFK paper assassination, right?
Yes.
There's a few people associated through her. One of them is still alive. And so someone, I think it was alien scientist Jeremy Reese recently, we were talking about this, that with the disclosure of information, that they can disclose anything, I think, as soon as somebody's dead or 20 years after everybody's dead. But if there's anybody who's still alive from the operation, they're supposed to protect it until that person's dead. And there are at least 2 or so people who are thinking, oh, everyone's dead from the JFK assassination. This happened so long ago. Well, there's probably still a couple people left, which is why they aren't putting out all the information yet. I think that might be the checks and balances that are keeping us from finding out exactly what's happening.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic that we're actually going to get all the good things we've been promised, but so far it didn't happen in the first 4 years. So.
Yeah, gradual gradual disclosure is always what we're promised. I just feel like gradual disclosure allows people to
I mean, why
get used to it.
Controlled. It's just controlled. That's it.
What do you guys think was the biggest piece of disclosure for you personally? For me, it was the gateway process. Like once I discovered that, I was probably late. It was pretty late in the game, but I was like blew me
So
away.
I was like 6 years old, and my cousins were coming from Yugoslavia, and so I met a cousin of mine who was a girl, and she had like a bullet like lodged in her arm. So I was already thinking about Yugoslavia, and I wanted to see what was on TV, and they were showing, the war and everything on C-SPAN. It was only the only place you could see it at the time, and then they cut to this Freedom of Information Act disclosure that had people from MK Ultra. And it was like the girls talking about Dr. Green and how that they'd been given drugs and mind controlled. And so that was like probably the first major. I was like, okay, the government did a bunch of and I asked my parents about it, like, what's that? And they're like, yeah, the government were doing a bunch of crazy stuff in the 70s, And like basically there was a war, there was a lot of things going on, like the Soviet Union and all that. And so like, but now all that stuff started coming out, and they're probably not going to be able to get away with hiding that stuff anymore. And so that was them.
That's a good
trying to tell me-
explanation. No, that's a good.
Yeah.
But they can
They're like,
still
that's
do it
probably
without
not gonna-
hiding it. Like it could be like Mockingbird, where they don't just now we're done hiding it, but we're going to continue doing it.
But that wasn't their insinuation. But that's
transform
what
it.
that's what I learned for sure. You know what I mean? But their insinuation was like it's all going to be better soon, and it wasn't. And so it was like, okay.
There are
Then-
golden ages in civilization, so I'm hoping we get one. There actually are extended periods where things are just going well. So it's like it's not like I'm blackpilled or anything. I did vote. I did end up voting, so I'm cautiously optimistic that things will go well. But I spent the past 4 years trying to hold accountable the MAGA movement. You know, like you can't just lionize the guy and put him up on a pedestal. Like he's overconfident, you know what I mean? And that's what happened to us in 2020. So it's like accountability is going to be a major thing.
This is so much less accountability and so much more confidence than before.
He's
It's
still
full house sweep, you know.
He still has a lot of potential to be dangerous. Like there's no
More than
reason
ever.
There's no reason to put all your faith in Donald Trump or any other
You got
politician.
to. No, but you have to. That's what's crazy. That's what's crazy about this. There's a situation where you have a dictatorship where the majority of House and Senate are controlled and all the judges. And so basically all you can do is be like, and I would say this to the left too. You basically just have to pray and tell him, you're like, all right, you got it. We're wishing you the best.
Okay,
I hope you do the best.
Let me comment on the
We
right
have
there.
to,
No, hold
we
on.
have to
I'm not
build
saying
and hope for the
I
best.
like
We have
the
to
idea.
just jump in
I'm not saying
and assume
don't
that things are going to be okay.
I'm not
Until they're not.
There's no going back at this point.
I think that really triggered a bunch of you. Which one first?
No, I just wanted to say something. I just want to say one thing. It was interesting that you said pray. Like they have to pray, and that's what I'm most interested in. Like the people who are absolutely so destroyed, like existentially, by this decision, like they're just completely hopeless in life right now. They literally put all their eggs in the basket of the next 4 years for some reason in this country, and like I want to see what happens to them. because
Show me on the
They're the
doll.
luckiest. They're the luckiest.
If
They're the
I'm right,
luckiest.
if I'm right in my theory, I think they will experience like a kind of like a dark night of the soul. You know, when you experience
Quicker
like
than us.
yeah, like politically induced ontological shock, and they have nothing. Suddenly it's like their whole identity,
But
every decision they've ever made is like, oh, can I have been wrong this whole fucking time? And
but
once
yeah,
you
the
go through that-
economy. The economy might be like a liberating economy. So this is like the time wave Terrence McKenna thing. So we have like the deep, and then there's a rise, right? So this is that rise period of the sine wave that we're experiencing. So they're going to go through that.
high novelty.
And the difference is you're talking about a group of people who've already been proven to be wrong. It is so much easier after you've been proven wrong to accept a new truth, right? Look at flat
Yes,
earthers.
you're
But you
right. That's
take
what happened to
people
me, literally, straight up.
But take people that take people that do believe that Trump will do godlike work to make the world paradise on earth, and how much harder it will be
and
for them.
they're
when
gonna
they
get
realize,
disappointed.
They're like, wait, why didn't QAnon stop the vaccine is a
And the
robot
reptilians,
aliens?
the adrenochrome.
They're gonna have a harder time, I
QAnon.
bet you, than the
You're right.
Democrats.
Well,
You're
it's a
right, you're right.
psychosis.
You're right.
It's a
You're right.
psychosis. Everyone's
is.
like people are at a deconstruction moment right now. Everything is just falling apart in their minds and everything.
But it's good. It's
they had
healthy.
all their hopes.
This is what postmodernism was supposed to prepare us for, but it failed at that job spectacularly. So now we're gonna have to just like figure it out in a new way, blending like old traditions.
I think that it's because the left failed because they thought the discussion was over. They just decided, okay, now we have power, we're in control. It's time for it's over. It's no more discussion. You're all Nazis. Everyone who disagrees with us, and that's it. Discourse done. We fixed language.
Like the boomers
basically.
fix racism.
But even with that,
Yeah.
you got Kamala Harris dressing like Hitler, and then tonight at her speech, which if you translate it into German, she literally says "Arbeit macht frei." It's all about how hard work
What?
is going to make us better. You know?
No.
No,
Really?
her speech is like hard work. We love hard work. Hard work makes us stronger. Hard work will free us. It's like, are you kidding me, lady? That's
You
the
didn't
way
say
to
the
that.
talk
concept
out.
of hard work, but and equity at the same time is like why work hard then? You know, so that's
I
called
wonder-
slavery. Hard work plus equity is slavery.
Freedom through labor. Isn't that something they had hanging over in the Nazi?
Yeah,
Like it was like freedom through.
Arbeit macht
Through
frei with
labor.
that. Yeah, that's what it was like. So, who is Ice Baby or Oron Agi? Do you guys know who this is? Ice Baby? Okay.
Nazi.
No.
Ice Baby is this Susie Wiles. Susie Wiles.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, so Susie Wiles, otherwise known as the Ice Lady or Ice Baby, she's the de facto and now a confirmed senior advisor to Donald Trump's 2024
She's
presidential.
like the
Okay.
Maria Korchik or whatever.
No,
her name is.
she's a witch. Like,
Yeah, I didn't even get to show you the picture, and you already saw it. I mean,
She looks like a good witch there in that picture.
she is. She's Glinda as heck.
Hey,
I mean, yeah.
you know,
she's hella
Hey.
Glinda.
you know what they say about witches? They can control your perception of them.
Well, I
Yo.
just find it interesting that Trump has all these white witches around him. He's got a lot of strong women. Let's put
I'm
it
just
that
saying
way.
Trump was, I said this from the beginning. I was like, Trump knows the game. He knows this shit. He's Gnostic as fuck. Like he's in a state of gnosis. He knows how to play this fucking game of like manifestation of like directing
Oh my God,
energy
I
and
couldn't
intention.
disagree with that any
Maybe.
more strongly.
You don't think
Go
Maybe.
Go for it. Let's
It's a
hear
bold
it.
I don't think,
claim.
I'm not saying
Let's
he's good
hear-
at it. I'm just saying he knows the game. He knows
is,
the shit.
Seth is also from New York, and so I feel like New
I
Yorkers
think
have
Trump's superpower is refusing to lose, and that is his superpower. But sometimes you lose bad and make everyone else lose too. Look, I mean, I
Well,
way
I'm not saying he's
prefer
like the
him.
most
I don't want
ethical
anyone to
guy.
sound like an anti or a hater or something. I way
Right.
prefer this outcome like a billion times to one. Like I was actually pretty scared that I'd be thrown in like a concentration camp. You know?
yeah, but you're a
things
cynic
went the other way.
realist. That's exactly right.
But no, I think his superpower is refusing to lose, and besides that, he doesn't really have a ton going for him except for
No, you're right. But that's
you know,
the thing.
starting
like, this
off
kind-
with a few $1 million is like and a bunch of connections in the real estate
Yeah, but the
industry,
thing
and that's a good head start. And he's plowed through his life refusing to ever take an L. You know what I mean? But I don't think that. Listen, people who are smart can speak well. Like
Yeah,
you
but
can
I'm
tell how
saying,
smart
like,
someone
when
is
it-
by listening to them speak. When someone
when it
can't
co-
speak well and they can't answer direct questions and they can't think of synonyms, he's like, it's going to be tremendous. And really, I think tremendous. You know, it's like that. These are signs that a person isn't smart. Like he presents as a not smart person, and then he makes a lot of mistakes constantly whenever he's speaking and making decisions. And somehow just Mr. Magoo's himself, and like maybe he's like touched by an angel or like guarded by like Pleiadian aliens or something.
Well,
like
God
he gets a lot of
loves
good
it.
results,
Here's
but it
what I-
doesn't
here's-
seem to be as a result of intelligence. Is all I'm saying.
I just want to say, look, I just want to say.
I have 3 points.
Also, wait. Can I say?
Wait,
I just want to
Chris
say.
has been
I
Chris has been
triggered
waiting.
everyone.
Chris has been waiting. We're letting Chris go, and then Kurt, you're
Wait,
next.
Look, I just want to say it doesn't matter. Wait,
Sorry, Chris.
no,
But
I
I'll
was
just
gonna
give a
say.
solo to him while you talk. And we'll mute him.
All right, I was gonna say that it doesn't matter if you're a rich guy, a smart guy, a stupid guy, a strong guy, or a weak guy. If you're schooled on like a certain level of metaphysics and are able to apply that to your school of thought and the way you could think, feel, and act, you don't have to be a genius to be able to utilize these principles. You don't have to be like some like 1000 IQ person to be able to understand intuitively the 7 hermetic principles, because this isn't rational
I
stuff.
totally disagree. I think you have to be very smart to understand.
No.
the
You
seven
have to
hermetic
you have to be able to spot patterns. You don't necessarily have to be the most clever person to spot patterns. You know, like
I think you
people could
do.
just have
That's
to be-
exactly what intelligence is.
I don't know. I've seen like stupid people who are just good
There's
at
different
pattern
kinds of
recognition.
smart. There's definitely
Exactly.
different kinds
Well,
of
you're
smart.
talking
Yeah.
about like Gilbert Grape, Mr. Magoo. Mr. Magoo.
No,
that's a
I'm
different
talking
thing
about
than he's
I'm
smart.
talking
That's,
about
like, guarded by
intuition that
angels.
bypasses rationality. There is
Yeah,
a
like
layer
a monk,
deeper.
like a
that-
chimpanzee that can like you put a bunch of numbers on a screen and a chimpanzee can figure out where those numbers were. Is that monkey wise or is that monkey smart?
Like
or is that
he
monkey
might
better
he-
than
he-
you are at pushing buttons?
he might be an idiot savant, first of all, or he might be a really good actor, better than we think. Basically, you know, like he might be playing.
That's what I think. I go. With that.
I think he plays a role of like that everyday idiot
He
bumbling
has
through things.
He has the best
but-
words.
I
The
don't think
best
he's an
words are
idiot.
not
I
always.
think he's a
well,
smart guy. He's
the
just,
best
like,
words are
smart enough
not
to understand
always-
Gnosticism. I don't
the
think.
best
he's-
Yeah,
words
no,
are
I agree. I
all
agree with that's it. I
Well,
agree with you there.
hold on though, because
But
Norman
he
Vincent
might be-
Peale was his biggest role model, and he
I don't
spent
think
so
he
much
really
time
read the
studying.
book. I don't think he read that book.
I think he spent a lot of time at the lectures though. When
No,
was
he
young,
listened to
went
the
off.
CD. He listened to the audio CD.
Right.
like,
Yeah.
about
He might
500
not be
times
smart.
apparently.
Like he might be smart enough to exploit aspects of it. Doesn't mean he's smart enough to understand it or to even contribute to it. He might just be able to access will to power to just
Yeah.
basically
set
dominate
intention.
and assert power. You know, like be a dick.
All right, now it's Kurt's turn. Kurt, you were trying to say it. What were you gonna say?
Frozen.
Oh, I fucking forgot you. No, I'm kidding. All right, so yeah, tying into Chris's point, I think historically, if you try to measure a president's IQ,
Fix your
a lot
microphone.
of these people, a lot of presidents in the past, if they scored high on IQ, that doesn't necessarily correlate with good leadership skills.
Not at
At
all, of
least
course.
that's how we interpret it now. And also with intelligence, well, I think we have a very, very egocentric view on intelligence. I don't think there actually is even any such thing as intelligence, at least by our Western standards, because it takes a certain level of indoctrination / ideology.
Microphone again.
to have a parameter.
You fade
That's
in and out
intelligence. I
like
think
Noam
it's my
Chomsky
connection.
in the
Sorry.
classroom.
Yeah, let me say something about
Okay, I'll try to make
something different.
reset my box here.
Cool. Hurry up.
But yeah, another thing is that with Democrats, I think there's a lot of concerning research that shows that a lot of elites and people and old money have been voting Democrat increasingly. And I think there's certain authoritarian connotations to that. And also, one thing weird about the Republican Party is the amount of plastic surgery that the Republicans have been getting. So, yeah, those were all interjections that have been annotating as we've gone along.
About Trump, I'm gonna have to digress and disagree a little bit with I think all of you, especially from watching the interview with Joe Rogan. I think that Trump is literally a fucking genius. Like his mind operates. Let me just say it. His mind operates at such a high level that when he's trying to explain what he's actually saying, it's like he's already like 40 steps ahead on what he's trying to explain, and he's trying to translate it into a dumb as fuck way for other people to understand. And when you actually listen to him carefully when he's talking for 3 hours straight on Joe Rogan, he's really like hinting at several different things where he's saying, yes, I thought about this in depth. I thought about this in depth. This is my conclusion based off all of these in-depth things that I've thought about. And he's trying to give you the inside baseball on like, hey, this is how this works, this works, this works, this works. This is how all of these things contribute to this one area. And this is what the best way forward is to make things work. And that's just what I got out of it. So, you know,
I guess what's amazing to me is like, it blows my mind how like so many people who make sense to me all the time have to construct for Donald Trump in his defense like a Da Vinci Code to explain all of the mistakes he makes. Like to explain 2020, it's like, oh no, you have to understand if he didn't put out the bad vaccine, they'd have put out the worst vaccine, and if he didn't get Pompeo, and if he had done this, and it's like Occam's razor, you reverse it, it gets totally inversed, and it's like the most complicated explanation is now likely true because we have to defend. I don't understand why you have to defend. Why he has to be defended.
I mean,
just
Terrence
because
Howard sounded.
Just because Donald Trump overthinks everything doesn't mean he's good at it.
Yeah, but Donald Trump's IQ, and this is like, so you're all right, actually. Vega brought up the point, idiocracy. There are so many dumb people. There are more dumb people than there were 20 years ago or 40 years ago. There are less smart people. There are less smart people than there were 20 years ago, and considerably less than there were 100 years ago. And this is something that Trump brought up, actually, I thought was a great quote. We must protect our geniuses, right? He's talking about Elon Musk, and I don't know.
Super geniuses.
Regardless what you mean.
That was an awesome quote.
But there are too few of them, and it's true. And this is maybe the opposite of the No Child Left Behind policy, which goes back, like the Jesuit schooling in France was, I know exactly at 9:03 every child is drawing the letter C at the same time. If they're too smart, we'll hit them because they can't be going to letter D yet. They have to start at they have to all be at the same time. Smart kids have to slow down. And slow kids have to be sped up. We have to traumatize them until they're faster. Well, this was the way they did in the 19th century. And
now
this
we
is
have
the way
Adderall,
they did in the 1990s with Adderall. Yeah. So what is the alternative? The alternative is we probably need to allow to proliferate neurodivergent humans. Well, isn't that exactly what woke ideology has protected or been saying we need to protect in the first place, right? Geniusing is a kind of neurodivergence.
The thing is that they're also defending the opposite of genius because we need
normies. If I didn't have normies to like do the
agree.
dishes and to keep the roads working, are you kidding me?
I agree.
Yeah,
I would die.
Yeah.
I would die.
The thing is that the numbers have changed because idiots used to die, and now idiots don't die. So there's a lot more idiots. They use
Robert Anton Wilson talks about this as anti-Darwinism, and so you can go to a town and they'll have a sign saying that we don't discriminate and that we hire people with special disabilities and that we have housing for people that couldn't compete normally in this society. And this is anti-Darwinism because eventually what that does is not only proliferate people that can't compete in nature, but it makes it impossible for people that would be able to thrive in nature to exist in our society.
In my opinion, it creates a new era of novelty to do this. And so all these people are able to access something that normies would never be able to access, a perspective that gives them some novelty to be able to create
a lot of
and by the way, how smart is Elon Musk? Elon Musk was on SNL twice. He's not
look at Stephen Hawking. Being strapped in a chair forever makes you go internal and like think like crazy and might as well get really good at thinking, and so I'm sure that
cheat on his wife
So
from
a
the
lot of
wheelchair?
people think that
He
they're
probably went to a
smarter
Diddy
than,
party, and he
Donald Trump.
probably
A lot of people
and
think
Stephen
they're
Hawking
smarter
went
than
into some
Donald
wild
Trump,
shit.
but
What?
he says, I'm going to do tariffs, it's going to lead to this, it's going to lead to this, it's going to lead to this, this is going to do this over there, we're going to open up the fuel, we're going to do all of these things, we're going to lower the prices this over here, we're going to make this better with this, and everybody's just like, oh, tariffs are going to raise taxes. So they think they're smarter than Donald Trump, but he literally explains that this is going to, and people only think in a one-dimensional way. They're like, oh, like tariffs is just going to raise taxes. It's like, no, because the tariffs is just one.
But
Yeah,
Reagan,
but
Reagan
none of those people are here. That's like a stick man argument.
smarter.
You're making a stick man argument because no one here said anything about tariffs, and I think that Donald Trump's plans for tariffs is a pretty good plan. I think when it comes to like business, like things like that, I think that's kind of economics and like money and stuff like that. That's kind of like is his wheelhouse, where he's probably smarter than me when it comes to the details of that. But you're talking about what he said in the Joe Rogan, so I'll give you another one from the Joe Rogan. He brings up the election was stolen in 2020, and Joe Rogan asked him like 4 times, how? Can you say a specific thing? Can you give me an example? Do you have any evidence? And he starts like weaving and talking about different things. And Joe Rogan now every episode since then has been like bringing it up, like I wish Trump just could have answered that question. Trump couldn't answer the question. He literally couldn't do it. It's like his number one topic, and he was not able to put a thought together or put the words together. So what was his secret jujitsu on that one?
I'd like to actually, that was a question I wanted
give the
to bring
guy,
up
give him
tonight.
a chance, give Jack a chance to answer it, because
Yeah,
no one
Jack,
said
if you
anything
want.
about tariffs.
I think I actually
he's
got this
completely
meme.
Frozen.
Oh
I
shit!
think he's been
I must
frozen
be
the
frustrated
entire
for him.
time.
That's what
Oh,
you
he's
get for
back.
asking real
There's another
questions.
Jack.
Hey,
Yo,
Jack,
there's
let him
three
answer when he comes
Jacks,
back.
yo.
Jack,
Dude,
bro,
it's a
Jack.
glitch in the
Yo, what's up,
matrix.
guys?
It's a
Hey,
glitch
Jack.
in the
Oh, he's back.
matrix.
Jack, how you doing,
I'm
Jack?
too.
All right, but Jack, I actually got
Jack,
this.
He's
Jack,
a Hydra. Watch
all right,
out.
Nimble Jack, ask Quick Jack really quickly, but I feel like I got this meme from you, which is it almost looks like 2020 was an anomaly, almost like somebody cheated. I know that for a year it was
Absolutely, and
illegal.
Trump should, of anyone alive, Trump should be able to put into words like and give a few sentences that encourage someone to believe that, but he couldn't say anything.
Yeah,
in
I
3
wonder
hours.
though. Do you think it was illegal? And I mean, things have changed a
No.
lot
Well,
since yesterday.
I think anybody, I gotta say about the election, like anybody
I
that
wasn't
thinks
comfortable
that
talking
somebody
about this till
can
today.
lose, so yo, anybody that thinks that he can lose in 2020 and that it's not rigged, but then have all of these things.
No,
go
but that's
against him,
another stick man
have
argument.
all
That's
of the
not what I'm
lawsuits.
saying.
He's got. I know, but I'm saying this. This is all I'm saying. I don't know what
Well,
you're
why
saying.
don't you say something
What
about what
I'm
I said? Because I
saying-
asked you a direct question.
Because I didn't hear you because
Oh.
I was disconnected.
My bad.
So
Do you want me
anyway,
to ask you
sorry,
again real
but
quick?
please rephrase it to me really quick.
Yeah,
But
sure.
let me get
You
out
were
what I'm
bringing
saying
up what
really
Trump
quick.
said about
Is
tariffs in
that-
the Joe Rogan podcast, and I was agreeing with you. Like he wasn't expressing it the best way you could about tariffs, but I think he is right about tariffs and taxes. But I had a counter question from the same Joe Rogan podcast when when Trump brought up the election being stolen in 2020, which I agree with, and I could explain it very well. Joe Rogan asked Trump to explain it, and Trump could not. He could not put together words to explain it. And Joe Rogan asked him over and over and gave him all the time he wanted. Trump could not give one example. He couldn't cite one piece of evidence. He couldn't even put together a general theme. So you're saying that the way he speaks is like a verbal jujitsu. Can you explain that?
Well, I mean, I think that he laid it out in the most simple terms possible. And I remember, it's just that how do you get all of these votes out of nowhere when you got like way more than everybody else? You know what I mean? In history or whatever, like people wanted to keep him in, and people came out in record numbers, but still somehow the record numbers was even more for.
Well,
Joe
why didn't
that
he
was,
say
like,
that? He didn't say anything.
guy.
He literally
Like-
he refused to answer the question. Basically, I don't know. I mean,
Like, lots of
there's no way I
people
can hold you
don't
to answer this.
vote. Lots of
I
people
mean, yeah,
refuse
but-
to vote.
Sure,
I
but-
agree it was stolen, by
okay,
the way. There's like people in the
let's-
chat that are saying,
Hold on,
crying
hold on.
about
Like,
Trump.
I think
voted for it.
I think it's really cool that we can finally admit that the election was stolen. That's one of the things I'm most excited about. Yesterday, when I was able to say
Well,
that
yeah,
the
because
2020
he wouldn't have
election
been
was
able to
stolen,
win.
because for the
Can I
last year
touch
and a
on
half,
the-
I just want to say I wasn't allowed to talk for 4 years about the election being stolen, or else I would have had my channel deleted. I've had friends who've had their channels deleted. We get
Yo,
strikes about
Andres,
bringing
this is
it
your
up.
time, bro. This is
No,
your
it's cool.
fucking time.
It's cool that
Do
we
it.
can actually talk about it now.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
weird
Apocalypse.
because when the 2020 election happened, it was really, there's so many ways that they were afraid they were going to sue you if you brought up these things. But there's no election that's ever been without corruption. And the last election had twice as many votes as this election does. And when we look at the numbers, the other thing is that this election was the most optics put on an election in history. It was so much harder to cheat in this election than the last election, right?
Oh,
There were so many
shit.
different things that were saying, hey, Who are these people? Are they dead? Who are these immigrants? Can they vote? Simultaneously, they were saying, hey, we're going to make it possible for people without IDs to vote, but we want to know exactly who they are so that we can find and follow up to it later. So it was really de-incentivized to commit voter fraud. Whereas last election, I would go to someone's house and then there'd be like, hey, I'm renting this place and here's a ballot for me. Now here's a ballot for the person who lived here last year and the year before. And there's 20 ballots that were presented that were for that address for anyone who'd ever lived in that house. And they weren't going to check, right? You just bring in ballots to your district and every district was going to count them up. They're not going to cross-check that ballot versus is that name also being used in 36 other counties.
Fear
right?
is a powerful tool.
So that was a big thing. I think the 2020 election had way more opportunity.
Was that also the sorry, that was the midst of COVID, right?
Yeah, people had the opportunity to vote legitimately too from home. They didn't have to go out to a polling place. It was a lot easier to just like mail your shit in. And in fact, they were encouraging a lot of people to do it. So a lot of people who wouldn't have voted normally otherwise were like, oh, you know, I hate Donald Trump this fucking much that I'll fucking fill in the circle and yada, yada.
Trump must impanel a commission to investigate the theft of the 2020 election. But I feel like that's the kind of thing, unless like I go there and like force him to do it, like there's no chance it's going to happen.
Yeah, the same way with the not arresting Hillary. I mean, the same way with bringing Fauci to the stage. This is what I think that, you know, good for you guys. Good for everybody who's like, we did it. But it's now 3 months until it starts being done. And so
accountability. Like the MAGA movement needs to hold Trump's feet to the fire.
Honestly, I think this is when the second coming happens because Elon Musk is the Antichrist. And it's up to you to get Neuralink. Or you're gonna accept God. You know, which you're gonna choose. Are you gonna get
Still say Mr. Beast.
I just wanted to touch on that tariff
Elon Musk
thing.
is the Antichrist, man. Sorry, what about the
You don't have to worry about that. The Antichrist is a highly respected rabbi, and I mean that's one of the qualifiers to be the Antichrist. You have to be like the Babe Ruth of rabbis that everyone's like listening to.
I didn't know that. But what about the tariffs? I want to hear about that real quick.
I think it's circular logic because he was like, oh, we know we're going to increase American businesses by deregulating them and then increasing tariffs on foreign companies. And he's saying that he wants to deregulate American companies to keep them here. But if he's raising tariffs on fucking foreign companies,
to bring them back,
why would the domestic? Okay, so why would the domestic companies leave if they're going to have, or if there are stronger regulations which increases the quality of the products, they're not going to leave because they're going to have to pay the fucking tariffs, right? So why deregulate and do the tariffs?
Like, the thing is that the regulation system is rigged, though. Like the regulation itself is corrupted. Like we have so much crap in our food. We have so much trash that is allowed by the FDA.
And deregulation is only magnifying that.
Well, you know, the thing is, the idea is he wants to do the deconstruction thing and then the reconstruction thing, and so he wants to replace that regulation base with another standard because, of course, he's not gonna be like, hey, put rat poison in baby food.
Father,
hopefully not.
Let the Kennedy take the fluoride out of the water, Father. Just let him do it. I can see it coming.
There we go.
Thank fuck.
I think that's. I think we have to like hope for some positive things, particularly the idea of corporate social responsibility. Corporate social responsibility. Corporate social responsibility is a good idea. Having corporations in the United States that realize, look, I'm not going to save money by doing this over there. And in fact, I'll probably make more American dollars, which will be more valuable in the future if I partner with the United States. We're headed towards the military-industrial complex from the 1950s. In the 1950s, the last time we had a full sweep like this in government was Eisenhower after World War II. This is the kind of economy we're headed into on purpose, right?
You're 100% right, and we've seen how corporations are strongly incentivized to follow social incentives. Sorry for that jumbled sentence, but with DEI, which is what they're doing now, they're spending billions of dollars and they're cutting out their own bottom line to follow DEI down to the letter. If you replace DEI with do not poison people, you can deregulate entirely. Now they've got their new social incentive strategy. So that's what we need to do. They're already compliant. They're like, you know, they've been made to heel, corporations, to DEI. Now we replace DEI with RFK, and then you can completely deregulate to a huge degree and get rid of all these.
And then we go back to the 1950s idea of investing in the companies that you want to see succeed. So Crest toothpaste, right?
It must
Americans buy
suck to be
stock
the CEO of Crest toothpaste, and you've got to poison people and then employ equity on your. It's like you're being forced to be like a horrible boss, basically,
Totally.
and a bad person. They would love to be able to make billions of dollars and be good people at the same time. This is natural human incentive.
Right, but Procter & Gamble owning a company instead of the people owning the company, which is funny because essentially what we're saying is Marxism, right? Like the generational investment in the labor, goods, and services that run the United States. That's a kind of Marxism, but that's
just
what's
don't call
emerging.
it that.
Cool, Trump's New Deal, like whatever. But
I was actually thinking about like doing a rewrite of Das Kapital, but like changing it all to like Trumpisms.
Yeah,
so that way people
we
are like,
need
oh,
a
this is a
cyber
great idea.
We need a
I'll be
cyberpunk Das Kapital. We need a communist manifesto.
Yeah,
for the
because
cyberpunk
destroying regulation and not taxing people is super Marxist. Like that's Marxist as fuck.
because we need a new Marxist doctrine that incorporates like cryptocurrency and shit. And
Marxism can mean that. Like there's no reason
we don't really
taxation
want
is part
power
of
to the people. That's equity basically. We want the most ferocious people out there to be encouraged to become CEOs, but then we want them to be able to engage in righteous social incentives instead of twisted, wicked ones like we have now. So
Free enterprise is super Marxist. That's what I think.
All right, like Henry Ford had it right. He's like,
tax.
you can have enough money to buy a Ford vehicle, but you can't sit on the board of directors if you haven't earned it. You know,
Jack, let's say you want to be a trucker, okay? And like to be a trucker, you need to have both access to vehicles made by free enterprise companies, right? So the military-industrial complex is making these cars and trucks. You're not just getting random trucks out there. I was gonna go on the whole thing about how he's a Marxist, because like also I was gonna say he needs roads, and what the hell is a trucker gonna do without social services like roads, right?
Yeah.
So truckers are relying on Marxism to commit free enterprise and capitalism, and it's the idea of the Marxist stage. I would say the internet is a great metaphor for Marxism because like it's a free.
Isn't the answer like the Jetsons, like remove all roads and just have like floating cars instead?
So we've done this before, but the Jetsons are a very brave new world where it's like you get to go only as far and only above the clouds because you're working for spaceless rockets. If you're not a cog in the system, then you're a Flintstone, right?
The Jetsons still have traffic, like it's absurd.
Right.
I used to be very resistant to the label communist or Marxist, but it's just like it just so happens that a lot of the scripture aligns with my beliefs.
I think that the problem is really just in the labeling, because a lot of people they value certain socialist values and they value certain capitalist values. It's absurd to be entirely one thing when you can be progressive and conservative at the same time about
Isn't
different
the benefit
issues.
of Marxism that capitalism thrives because you have industrial social service infrastructure that makes it possible for the individuals to commit to free enterprise?
The only difference is like who benefits from the management of the resources, because it's all about maximizing the efficiency of resource usage. But whose benefits? People or the owners of who control the infrastructure around the resources.
We really just need a benevolent person. Like we just need someone, or just like some leader,
some 6'9"
actually.
The Antichrist. No, that's not the Antichrist.
Yeah, it's like
it might be. He's dressed like the Antichrist.
It's like Terrorisk was saying at the beginning, when you get a genius, you don't always get a good result from that. What we haven't had in our lifetime is a genius who's also like a well-intentioned person. Like Jimmy Carter had like an IQ of like 165 or something. He's like one of the worst presidents of all time. So it's
maybe
like being
Prince.
We need someone well-intentioned, like with Trump's good intentions and angelic nature, and like the brains of like a Jimmy Carter. You combine
Holy shit! Look at that fucking
get
kid.
a golden age.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. That kid. I need to point out how tall that fucking dude is. Like Donald Trump he's no shorty. Donald Trump is a tall man. He's way taller than me. Baron Trump is a 6'9". Fucking Nephilim. That's a Nephilim right there. Like he's got Nephilim DNA spliced in or something. Like some.
Yeah, he probably. It seems he probably has some sort of genetic modification, cutting edge stuff.
Jesus fucking Christ! Like look at that.
But
kid. He looks like a Greek god.
He does.
I noticed that we're all a bunch of guys here. What have any of you heard?
Don't assume.
Shut up. Has anyone here heard from like the women in their lives about how they feel about today and and the fears that they've been experiencing around the Trump presidency.
Totally. It's hilarious. Yeah, people are freaking out. It's like they completely are emotionally confused. They're like, "Oh, this is it. I'm gonna need to leave the country."
You know what? I'm impressed. I'm impressed. There were Kamala preppers. I never thought I would ever see a Kamala prepper, but there were many Kamala preppers. I was like, "Holy shit!" They got their go bags. They got their shit.
I think it ties directly into the idiocracy thing, where it's like they feel like they're losing their bodily autonomy because reproduction is being regulated at a federal level, like they're legislating against their bodies. So the people who are smart enough to think like, oh, this isn't a world to bring children into, aren't breeding. And then the people who aren't smart enough are breeding recklessly and wouldn't necessarily have access to the resources to limit the influx of lower IQ DNA and people into the population.
If you can't understand why your trans friend is scared right now, then you don't have a trans friend. You know a trans person.
Oh my God, he's got an Alan Watts voice going on.
That's like what it's all day though. It's weird. Like I had seen so many of these posts. I don't want to
anguish.
Get in trouble.
It's literal despair.
Anguish. But I want to ask him, like, what is the fear? Because no one wants to stop you from taking drugs. No one wants to stop you from being yourself.
These people have created the worst scenario in their head possible. Like they've literally conjured it, and for them, it's real because they believe that it's real. So that's what they're afraid of.
I almost think it's more of a case of like being raised that when you cry, you get your way and you never get punished. And I'm not saying I'm for corporal punishment or not, but if you cry and you get your way from daddy growing up, and then when you encounter a boss and you start crying and the boss just fires you, you don't know how to handle it. It's like they say, don't cry over spilled milk, but if spilling milk's the worst thing that ever happened in your life, that's your Vietnam. So for these people, even though nothing bad is happening to them or going to happen to them, this is their Vietnam because they're crying and not getting their way. And daddy always gave them their way when they cried.
It's because everyone's afraid of the fascists.
Yeah, but I'm still optimistic because I think like what you guys described was like a form of emotional trauma, and I think if they go through that sooner the better. Like I think I don't think it'll kill them.
Push through.
I think it'll kill them. I think it'll.
A major part of leftism and LGBTQ ideology is trauma programming. So they go, look, this is your enemy, this is your allies. And your enemies are the reason you're traumatized, and they're the society that hurts you. So when you have Trump who wins, he becomes the scapegoat for all this, and they're the focus point of all their suffering and all their pain. And right now it's boiled over. They were trying so hard to be the party of joy and just gaslighting endlessly, and just support. And it's just you gotta have more than just support. You gotta be able to take criticism and to think critically. And it can't you can't have your entire campaign be slander and pander. It just doesn't make sense.
Slander.
I think we're gonna see like more accountability coming from them this time, like a real autopsy on why they lost. Like I even saw on The View today, they were like, well, at least democracy worked, and we still have democracy. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was a much less severe meltdown. But it's 7:00 and I gotta run. I thank you. I had a lot of fun.
I love you, bro. We love you, Seth.
Cheers, bro.
Let me remind you all, if you guys like to listen to good music, then you're going to want to check out Seth's music. Got Venice Beach Dub Club right here. Go to linktree.vbdc.
Oh, thank you.
Smoke them if you got them. Find out music video, A Little Higher, Stay Cool, all the best songs.
And a new Christmas song coming on Black Friday. So
exactly, there's another one coming, and he has a Christmas song already too. So if you're in the spirit of reggae Christmas time thing, bro.
Thang.
Oh,
it should have been thang.
Freudian slip.
No, it should have been thang. I say thang in the song, but I thought people wouldn't be able to search for it. Never think about what other people. Dang it.
So I listen to your music probably more often than you think I do, but I've listened to this song way more often than you'd believe. Like I listen to this song throughout the year. It'd be summertime and. Now it's snowing in Minnesota. I feel like all the time.
Nice.
Everybody check it out. All right, thank you for being here.
Much love, everybody. Appreciate you guys.
Adios.
Middle East.
Well, I mean, as much as I love that guy. He's a good guy. As much as the LGBTQ community, okay, maybe aside from kids given drugs before they're 18, which I get that probably isn't going to be a super Trumpy move. Transhumanism under Trump will take off, right? LGBTQ plus.
Because Elon. Elon gets all the support he wants. You know,
and
like
Trump,
now he's
Trump's doctor, right? Because Trump's a hair doctor who passed recently. Now he has like a slew of new crazy doctors that are taking care of all of his transhumanist interests. He loves keeping his hair. He loves being alive. He wants to stay young for another 30 years.
Yeah,
he's taking the NNE plus. Yeah, so like you're gonna see, and this is what I've been trying to explain, that the faster we allow for acceleration of technology, the less restrictions we have over these labs in Silicon Valley or in Panama, the less that those companies are required to get purchased by LaRoche or Venrock Labs or Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer, right? Pfizer wants to buy your transhumanist solutions and keep them.
I get it. No, it makes sense. But Andreas, honestly, like to be honest with you, like if I think about it, like the logical conclusion, like after all the transhumanism, it's going to be right back at where the ancients were, where the ancients were like, all we have is God, all we have is the one. And then we find our like digital semi-metaphysical utopia through like technologically induced like whatever. But at the end of the day, we're still going to be met with the same fucking questions. It's like, well, there's only one thing at the end of the day, the Most High, right? So it's like after that, that's why I think to escape samsara, you just got to figure out how to not want to leave samsara. Once you figure out how to, like, when you just want to stay, that's when the universe is like, all right, sorry, you're done here, and you're like, no, just when I finally figured it out, just when I finally figured out how to escape suffering, it's like no.
The thing is that you end off, if you stick around too long, you end up interfering with other people's development. So it could be that you have to get out in the same way that people have to get old and die, because the alternative is overstaying your welcome. So it could be that at that point, it could be that you got to move on to something higher. It's like you got to get out of elementary school to go to high school. At some point.
Yeah.
You can't be stuck.
I don't want to leave my elementary school friends. It's like, well, you got a kid.
I want to be a kid forever. I want to stay in Neverland.
I do think there's some weird things, like we talked about in the debate a bit. I don't know if it's really a debate, discussion, but we called it that, where abortion issues, trans issues, and something that kind of seems reasonable is, while it's great to see Roe versus Wade decodified so that states can make up their own minds about it, then you've got 8 states that are codifying abortion, and so the rest of the country is like, wow, these are baby murder states. That's like the new way to look at those 8 states.
Yeah, it's a little discriminatory.
And then on top of that, you're going to see the diversion of ideology, where one says, yeah, that's what we're all about. We're about trans rights, and we're about trans cat litter boxes in our classrooms. And I think we're going to see further accelerationism, because the less you have to spread this out over the entire country, the easier it would be to just turn Vermont into like a trans kitty corner, like that.
I think
cat boys are coming.
Yeah,
bro.
No, I get it. I just think fundamentally abortions should be legal, even though like personally people may frown upon it. I mean, if I'm going to be honest, I personally kind of frown upon it, but I think it should be available to everyone. Like, I think it should be legal, and it should be a personal choice.
I think it should be available in the first trimester. But to answer Andrew's question earlier, my wife was super excited. You were asking about the women in her life. My wife has never voted. She's never been about voting, but she was extremely enthusiastic, and she kept on being like, "When are we going to go vote? When are we going to go vote?" And then the day of the election, like, she was more nervous than I was. Like, she was shaking her boots, and the reason is because she feels that she wants to be able to be a mother. You know what I mean? Like, this is an aspect that people don't look at. It's because we're seeing all of this stuff going on with education all over the world. We've got California, like, you can't, like, that you get a hide from the parents if the kid is transitioning at 5 years old and stuff like that. Like, she is super psyched out about that shit. She is like, no, not for me. Like, that is what motivated her. So
you got a good point.
You have the female, you have the feminine on the other end that is totally like on board with.
Yeah,
with all
I feel
stuff.
bad now, because when Andrew asked me like what women in my life were thinking, I immediately went to trans women with penises, and that's only one kind of woman. There's a lot of women out there, and it's true. Most of the women I know who have vaginas and kids are Trump supporters. It's true. Not all.
Well, I mean, none of our rights are being threatened, so it's pretty easy to talk about it like objectively. But I'm sure that people who are in a very real way feeling like their freedoms are being infringed upon,
Right. So Brittany,
they just don't get their way 100% of the way.
Brittany's sister was on the
getting
show
your
with us
way
the
and
other
being criticized and having your rights
No, that's
are
different.
two totally different things.
Yeah,
Well, the
so
truth
like
is,
Diana, hold on. Diana brings up the point. Diana is one of my favorite women, by the way, and she says personal choice. The baby is a person. It has no voice. Not cool.
Okay, so I
that
have
is the
thoughts
way
on
a
that.
lot of women feel, right?
I have
And
thoughts
think
on
fair.
that. So here's the deal. I think I do envision a humanity that eventually has full control over their sexuality. And I'll be honest, I don't think we're that species yet. And I think I do have faith in us. I do think one day we won't have to give a fuck about issues like abortion. I think one day we can grow and evolve as a species to eventually
I think that if the more illegal it is to do abortions, the less we're coming up with solutions to get the fetus
You're right. You're
out
right. This is why I said it. This is why I said it should be legal, because I think if we evolve in the right way, even if it is legal, ideally none of us would have to do it. You know, because I truly believe in the humanity where we just control our shit. You know?
But you know what? Also, devil's advocate. All of the cool plastics that were invented because they made cannabis illegal, right? We have all these things that we wouldn't have actually would have just used hemp oil.
No, and there'll always be exceptions to the rule.
Maybe if we make abortion illegal, we come up with a better solution. Like I said, like if you could get the fetus out without harming the mother, I mean, it might take another 10 years, but we're pretty good at tech.
No, you're right.
Or just have
there's a way to take care of that kid.
Yeah, build an incubator.
Yeah, put it to work.
Yeah, because
build the wall.
And that was my next point. Andrew's joking, but I'm not. That baby, you shouldn't call it a baby or a fetus. You know what you should call it? A potential taxpayer. That's not just a joke. That's freaking. That is really what you have to do. You have to start looking at this is a potential vote. This is a potential taxpayer. This is somebody that I could in the future exploit. And so I probably shouldn't destroy them before I exploit them. That's probably the way we should be looking at it.
That's the objective way to look at it. You're right.
And instead, people are saying, oh, it's expensive to raise a baby. Well, you got a point, lady. Maybe we shouldn't be making you raise the baby. Maybe the state and the Catholic Church should start taking back kids, raising them the way they used to. Is that what you want?
You could put them in the military.
Yeah, it seems interesting that that people get all upset at the idea of the Catholic Church abducting children all over the world to make foundlings, but they're totally cool with abortion. Well, okay. Seems a little hypocritical, right? What do you want? What do you want to do? You didn't want to deal with it. It was a lot to deal with. It was expensive.
And you don't have to give birth. We could take it out of you and raise it ourselves. You know, like you like donate. Well, yeah.
What's the deal about murdering it? Why is that so? Or stopping it from being born? I'm sorry. What do you call it? But like, what is the reason why that's the goal? It shouldn't be, right?
No, that's never. No, I don't think that. I really don't think
that. To an end, right?
Yeah, I don't think that was ever the goal, honestly.
So we could replace abortion.
Probably, yeah. Extraction. But you can't forcefully extract a fetus from a woman, too. That's still kind of invasive.
No, yeah, it's all voluntary. That's what I'm saying. If she doesn't want to deal with it because it was too expensive, you should have an alternative to abortion. I think a better solution would be that we finance, like in Iceland and Finland, they need babies, right? Not just because of taxes, not just I mean, that's a helpful thing, but they have oil money. The reason is incest. They're straight up afraid. They have apps like Tinder that just make sure to remind you how closely related you are to the girl you just met at the bar. They're afraid of that. It's not a joke. And so for them, they need to have more babies, and they're paying women to have babies. Like, dude, stop focusing on your freaking art and have some kids. That's the way it is in Finland, straight up. And they'll pay you. They'll make sure that
have
you
some
have 20,
kids, yeah.
30,000 euros extra a year. You don't have to work, and this is going to benefit in the long run because you'll have if you have 3 to 6 kids as opposed to 0.8. That's a whole different future for Finland, right? So it's become pretty logical to try to help people. And it's weird because I feel like 100 years ago, you wouldn't think of it that way. It's expensive to have a kid. Well, the whole point was the farm was hard to run, so you needed.
So you
more
have
hands.
kids, yeah.
So it's
like fuck people. I can make my own people. All right, I don't need you, society. I'll make my own society.
I think the biggest issue. So for Andrew, which you're talking about, because you do care about women. You have women near you.
I'm going to be raising like 3 future women. Yes.
So you have a wife and you have all daughters.
And you want to protect them on all levels. So one of the things that I think would be beneficial to you is
lucky you.
The Hippocratic Oath. So the Hippocratic Oath.
I'm not fucking around. I mean that.
No, me too. That's we obviously love you.
Because goddesses have more divine feminine energy, and divine feminine energy is honestly more interesting than divine masculine. Divine masculine energy is like battlefield shit.
But to protect women, I think that all we really need is to make sure that anyone who's dealing with women, like doctors particularly, that they have an oath of some kind that keep them caring about their patient above all things, above anything else, right? The Hippocratic Oath has existed for thousands of years, and it does just that. It says, I swear that I will put this patient's well-being above all other things. It's the reason why medical marijuana was usurping federal law and scheduling, because doctors had to say this is what was better for the patient than giving them fentanyl. It's the exact same reason why a doctor will protect a woman whose life is at risk during pregnancy, even if that means that the baby dies. And anyone who tells you that the doctor's worried that the new, like Texas Christian right is going to take their medical license away, well, they should be far more worried about being in trouble for violating the Hippocratic Oath, because that is a bigger deal.
That, yeah, I
That is
would
a
love
bigger
that too. I
that's a
agree.
good solution. That's
there's
a pretty good
but there's
solution.
so much corruption in the medicinal industry, and you know, because the way that pharmaceuticals have like sort of like incentivized doctors to like work for profit, a lot of people get into medicine because it's lucrative, you know. It doesn't seem to be so much because like they want to help people. It seems more because I'm guaranteed 6 figures at least after going through 12 years.
That's a great example though. So let's say you're a doctor and you don't give a damn, okay? And someone tells you, all right, you're either going to protect this fetus because this 20 odd person Christian right group is telling you to, or you're going to do your job and you're going to protect your patient, or you're going to lose your medical license and you're going to get in trouble, not just in Texas, not just in the United States, but in the entire world. You will never be able to practice medicine again because you will have violated the Hippocratic Oath. This is a bigger deal. That's all I'm saying. I feel like that if they care about money, then they're going to be incentivized by following the more fundamental law.
But no hospital wants to be the hospital that had the doctor that got in trouble for XYZ thing. That's like, if you look at like, they made like multiple series of Dr. Death because there was so many different doctors that performed malicious surgeries, like didn't have the experience, and were just basically fucking around with a scalpel and injuring countless people.
Yo, Andrew, guys, both of you, what would you do if you got injured back in like the 1800s and you wake up from your like injury, like from your whatever, you got knocked out, and then you wake up in a doctor's chair and they said, son, we cut off your penis?
They go back to the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
I'd be like, where's the opera?
Yeah, right. There would still be work for you in the 18th century, probably.
I would be so less
to hit those notes, you need your testicles cut off, not your penis.
So I just got balls and no dick.
Yeah.
Circus it is.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Jeez.
All right.
But yeah, no, I feel like I was way more worried at first, to be honest, because I thought you were gonna say leg, and for whatever reason, when you said penis, like, okay, literally my leg bothered me more. I don't know why, and I feel bad because I have a friend.
Leg too.
I have friends in wheelchairs. We brought up wheelchairs yesterday. We have a friend who Robert Wiles, who has a leg that's a mechanical replaced leg. I think he has the Constitution like written into his fake leg, and I think those guys are almost always able to do more than me. I've seen people with one leg walk Mount Everest. You know what I mean? So I don't know why I'm so complaining,
dude. The Paralympian runners, like the track athletes, can run faster than people who have like their biological legs because of the way that the prosthetics are constructed. The sports ones,
people gotta start cutting off their
rebound.
legs. Transhumanism, bro. Like replace them with wheels.
Yo, speaking of transhumanism, I just want to say that also kind of ties in with like, you know, family birth or whatever. I'm just saying, like, I'm starting to think like if you take reincarnation as a fact, family lines are kind of important, right? Family lines are like the highways or the transit lines for reincarnating souls, right? So it's like, you know, if I could think of one unified purpose that every human is kind of just born with on their like checklist of reincarnation tasks to do, I think like trying to like chip away at the family, the generational curses, the generational traumas and all that shit, try to like clear that shit up. Because if you clear that shit up, that's like your community service, you know, that's like doing your communal service.
So I noticed this in China and in Asian cultures more, like not as much in India. So like, so in China and Korea and Japan, this idea of I want to say ancestor worship, but it's a little different. It's a little cooler than just ancestor worship, but it is the idea of sustaining the family line and everything. That's a huge deal. In India, though, you have, and granted, a lot of this like Buddhism comes from Hindu culture originally. In India, you have full-on religious paths that require you to be celibate for 1,000 generations in a row. You cannot touch another woman, and they'll keep trying, right? And the idea is after you do that, then you're going to become a god. So there are definitely paths that try to tell you, hey, you're not going to need, and I think this is legitimate mainly because I've seen this, like I've seen priests and nuns that hadn't, you could ask, like, why didn't you
transcendence?
Why didn't you become a mom? And like, why did you become a nun? It's like, well, because if
like,
I
did you have to
mom,
Neuralink up? Like, you could also reach godhood in other ways and more holistic
if you
ways.
became a mom, you might have 1 kid, 7 kids, 12 kids, right? But if you become a nun, you might teach thousands of kids and might have huge influence. And so maybe there is something to that you don't need.
But then again, you also, I mean, I think that it's the ironic joke, right? It's like to get closer to it, you have to forsake a lot of things that would, for example, be like sex and like being able to like reproduce. But if everyone did that, then there would be no more family lines. I mean, pretty much everyone's quote unquote ascended, but really they just die out. I mean, materially anyway. But on a metaphysical
I think that's the idea. There will be normies. It's like maybe if you're trying on one hand to sustain enough people that out of that you can have every once in a while some crazy people, and those crazy people, you try to push them as far to mutate as they can go in hopes that some of them, maybe 1 in 1,000 of those crazy people might end up being useful to a new normative. But then the normies, they just continue playing it safe, right? You gotta have Midwesterners that just, right? That seems like what they're trying to do to the world. Is that way, if evolution happens, but it's not right, they can fall back on people that are 20 years behind the times.
You know, I have a friend who comes from third world country and comes from scarcity, and they have massive families because the mentality is maybe one of them will be a doctor. Maybe one of them will be able to. Maybe one of them.
That's so Chinese. Estino as fuck.
It's survival through fodder.
Basically. I like the way you said scarcity instead of scarcity because it sounds like a place. It's like Scar City, you know.
Yo, honestly, I think abundant. All right, so this is where I get.
It just, you know, you got
a genetic blunderbuss.
No,
you know, like the thing is, you have to have the mentality in the West is so flawed because we've slowed down. Like we've literally been injected with the notion that we got to regulate population, that we got to have less kids.
Yes,
and then ultimately we have immigration because they will have big families.
You're right. But here's the deal. I think that the cure is so simple though. And I keep saying this and I get into arguments with people for some reason over this shit. I'm always like, if you want a cure to scarcity mentality, it's as simple as gratitude. Literally just be thankful. No matter how bad things get, I swear to God. I don't normally swear to God. I swear to God, like you will find at least one thing to be grateful for. Like, you can find one. It could be anything. I'm grateful for the cigarette. I'm grateful for my friends that I'm talking to right now. I'm grateful for, like, even if I was broke, I could say like, oh, I'm grateful for a sunny day, or I'm grateful for a rainy day to give me something to think about. I'm grateful for a cold day to, like, you know, like remind me of what I was actually grateful for.
It is a quick pickup into self-actualization for sure.
It's a tool. It's a mechanical. It's a psychologically mechanically sound tool. You know, like you could use this in any given situation. That's to tap into abundance mentality. And when you tap into abundance mentality, you're in an abundant state and things work out better for you. I swear. You treat people better. People treat you better. You end up looking, if you can maintain it as long as possible in longer stretches. Sometimes you fall. Sometimes we get into our scarcity mentality. Sometimes we get scared. Great. You know, that's natural. But if we could expand outwards again, you know, when we expand and contrast, just like breathing, you know, just expand a little further every time. And you could do that just by being grateful for more shit. It's that simple. And I get it. Some people are defined by their traumas. Some people are defined by their lack. Some people are defined by
can you like trick somebody's trauma? So like earlier I was thinking, people, and right now their whole world's been told to them to be a lie. They don't know what's coming next. They're all worried. I remember when Trump first got elected, I had people who hadn't talked to me in like 4 years or a year or whatever, all of a sudden call me out of the blue, be like, okay, what's happening? Or in a couple of years from there, when like the quarantine was starting, they're like, okay, what's happening? Because they used to think I was the worst or the craziest or the most wrong, but all of a sudden they have to fall back on, maybe I was wrong. Maybe this guy does know, right? So I wonder, like, can we pivot the ball? Can you start to show these people America, freedom to fascism? Can we teach them about esoteric agenda? Is there like a Is there a zeitgeist pill
No, you
plan
can't.
for
I don't
the
think so.
left?
No, it has to.
I think there is. It requires a moment of psychosis. You have to have that moment where all
This is heavy.
all their presuppositions of reality are fall apart, and then you have to be like, here's the truth, if possible. Here's the truth, and then they'll be, oh shit, like I can actually see more, instead of a deception that they will latch on to, because in a moment of psychosis, people go, oh fuck, I don't know what's real anymore. Okay, well, flat Earth is real. You know, like they'll latch on to they're literally grasping at
honestly,
straws.
Colin said
never
this.
grab at the right ones.
Colin said this. He was like, when I said, imagine a world where everyone could make themselves happy or sad using just their thoughts. Those are the most powerful psychics, honestly. And if you could do that, and if everyone could do that, Colin was like, well, that's dangerous, because imagine just dropping a nuke on a country. It's like, whoops, sorry, you know, I was just kidding around, right? You can just get over that real quick. And then they're like, I guess I can. Yeah, you're right. And they just get, you can't do that. You know, you can't live. It's a dangerous world. Like a magical world is inherently dangerous. You can't have everyone.
Brave New World. That's Brave New World, where it's just like pleasure, control through pleasure, control through neurology.
I think we're so much closer. I was just thinking about this today because I was talking to these 10-year-old kids, Brittany's kids, and they're alpha generation, and they're self-aware. They're like, hey, you know, you can't use alpha slang. Like, you can't say let them cook or something like that, because that's, you guys are boomers, and boomers can't, maybe you're a zoomer even, but zoomers can't use alpha slang. So and these are 10-year-olds that are talking
cultural appropriation.
He's culturally appropriating the slang of this alpha generation. But I was like, you guys, your generation might actually have the hardest challenge, and that's going to be not being mean to the betas because they're called betas. You know, like that's literally what's, you're alphas, and you're going to have kids younger than you, and you're going to have to not call them betas. That's the next thing. And then from there, they're alpha, beta, gamma. That is those are the capsulons of those are the caste system of Brave New World. So are we at the singularity point, like as obviously as I've been thinking we are, and then we're just preparing the next few generations for the slave state?
I think that the truth is really, you just have to pay attention to fiction, you know? It's all mapped out in there. It's all really,
you would have magic battles
really
and
shit.
shit.
Pay attention. And it you know, some of it is metaphorical, some of it is allegorical. It's kind of like religion, you know, like there is an interpretive dance to this, but you can literally see so much of what is revealed hidden in the culture and the entertainment and the creations that we subconsciously manifest.
Well,
like
also so you say it can be done, they just need to go through this psychosis. That was what I was hoping.
I say
you were saying you don't. Let's go with that.
I say you can't regulate it. I say this has to be done, like, which is sad, because like I know this is gonna like really, like, this might be triggering, but it's like literally, if we unlock this magical world, this metaphysical ability, and just as standardized, there has to be a period of like massive violence, like some, because
it's like, going to be a war. It's going to be an Armageddon. It's an Armageddon.
Yeah. And
but the forces of hell and
when the dust clears, you're going to have a magical world again, where you're going to have adventurers and journeymen going from lodge to lodge, land to land, going from like, do you remember the old days?
Andrew's daughter's wearing skulls.
Well, it's an archaic revival where we're going to return to a state of adventure.
And this is why, like, I don't just like say this lightly, because I know this literally implicates everyone to a possible future that they may not be ontologically prepared for. You know, I get it, and my heart goes out to them. All I have is gratitude and love for, you know, the human species when I think of it.
My heart goes out to you all.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I'm trying. You know, like I'm just when it comes to the 5D expansion though, and people are like, do you ever feel like you have to fight for it? I'm like, no, I literally just feel like I'm leaning on something already about to tip over. Like, to me, this is all prophesized. This has all been predicted. This has all been, you know, statistically analyzed. Like, there was a flood, there was all this shit, there is a prophecy, and there is a cycle, there is a cosmic cycle. You could look at it in space, you could observe it in like the way our sun behaves, you know, like the way it just shoots things out, and the way like our whole solar system is surrounded by the Kuiper belt, which like has an effect on like the way things hit us on a cosmic level, like to an energetic level, to a personal level, you know, like these things really fuck with us. These things do make cycles that we can't necessarily see with our eyes or with our senses, but they exist, just like patterns exist, you know, like patterns are real phenomena. They are entities, they are conscious, you know, like they are living things. And once we accept this, like all of us collectively as a species, it's going to be really messy at first, like really, 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 really messy. And I don't know if we're ready for that. I hope we are.
Well, it's mass psychosis.
Yeah.
Mass psychosis.
Yeah.
So it's that, but that I think you would end it off saying yes to a degree. Like it's possible. Like we are getting there. It's just part of the process, you know?
Yeah.
It's really just part of the process.
Is everybody getting there, or is it like only 144,008 billion or something? Like, are we talking about some crazy? It seems to me like you got that tightrope between mechanistic happiness machines made of death, right? That's an option for. You could become part of that sustainable system, or you could become gods.
It could be that the 144,000 are going to Mars, and the rest are going to be on Earth.
Well, you know what? Well, the thing is, the reason
this is literally what's coming.
Well, to me, it's like the bridge between the 4D and the 5D, right? Like 4D will drive you crazy if you just stay there, but 5D connects it all in a very coherent way. We're all souls. Every being has souls. We're all just like we're all water drops. Like our souls are water droplets in the ocean of God, right? So if you apply that to everything, like everything kind of makes sense. Whereas if you don't have that, that spiritual essence,
what do you guys think about
I think we're going to have massive breakthroughs with DMT research, psychedelic research, with the notion that Gaia is a living entity, that it has a soul, that we can communicate with it. I think that this is all eventually going to come out, and that will be the revolutionizing thing that basically unites humanity. That's my hope.
That's John C. Lilly, SSI Echo research seems to prove, but also Barishka Kiprianovich was. Have you heard of this kid? You guys remember this kid a few years ago, right? He was a Russian. He was a Russian kid with a mullet who was really good at math, and they found out. They're like, "Why are you so good at math? Your parents are kulaks." And he's like, "Well, actually, I'm a reincarnated Martian. I'm from people from Earth from the future who went back in time to 250 million years ago on Mars." Right, so some people in our timeline in the near future, let's say 2025 to 2050, evolve to this singularity point, and then they want to be outside of time so that they don't harm the timeline. So they go beyond time, beyond our like cataclysmic Graham Hancock timeline, and off of Earth to Mars, where they live underground 250 million years ago. And then that is who eventually dies and is reincarnated back down. That's his story. And there's this whole thing with the idea that there's a breakaway civilization that's already emerged and that maybe is inevitable on most timelines, right? That we are angling towards or like curving towards. Is that kind of what you're saying, Vince?
Like a nexus?
Something like that.
I mean, timeline nexus.
Hopefully, I'm glad they're not trying to mess with stuff, because it feels like a lot of the things that are coming here are trying to like save their timeline by fixing ours.
Well, the problem is like it's already happening for me on a personal level, because I'm literally making contact with my future self. I could say that objectively true. You know, I could say I write myself letters, I do myself favors. You know, that's literally me making contact with my future self. My past self, I could say I forgive you for your past mistakes. You know, like I'm sorry I wasn't there to help you out sooner. But I truly think the longer you do this, like as a practice, like the stronger that relationship becomes, and you become like a quantum being, you know, because you're not limited to this linear present. Then you're suddenly like, you're getting guidance from your future self, and you're supporting your past self. So that chain kind of continues. And the longer you do this, you could also make contact with your other future selves. And this is, I think, a 4D practice. I think this is all 4D shit. And if you just do this without knowing God, you will go crazy. You will go mad. You will go absolutely mad with like avarice maybe, or just your worst basest desires. But if you keep God in your heart as you practice these 4D timeline manipulation tactics, then you'll be okay, you know, because you could trust your intentions, you know, and that's what being a shaman or a mystic is all about. Andreas, you're muted. Shit.
No,
so Terence McKenna was talking about the transcendental object at the end of space-time that is drawing us into the future, and so this idea that time basically can retro-causally be affected, and that we're all able to influence one another's. I've been creating music in the past few weeks about this stuff. I mean, I just made a song called Retro Causality and non-Euclidean Hammer Space.
And
I
I'm
think
thinking,
that's exactly. Yeah. What do you have that? We should play that actually. I saw you sent
if you
that
want,
earlier.
go on SoundCloud. Or
we'll do that. Let's do that in a second. But hold on, really quickly, because what you're saying in terms of a ripple in the pond, that something in the future could affect something in the past, right? Kind of that level.
Because you know, like gravity is like, let's say Earth or planets are gravity wells. Well, they're also time wells, because gravity has an effect on time. So it could be that, you know, like this is all in the same space, in the same gravity well, and then time is just all there in that gravity well.
Totally. Gravity wells are related to Schumann resonance points. So there's certain frequencies of Schumann resonance which are repeating.
Right? We all have gravity wells because we all have like we have density, we have gravity.
So this is kind of touching on this huge argument that I got into with a certain nemesis that I have in the group about whether or not quantum physics and the implications of the multiverse imply that in the infinite equations that could represent possible universes, that there is one with just because I see people talking about flat Earth. We already mentioned it before, so I'm sure you're not worried about getting flagged for saying that.
I think we could talk about the election and flat Earth. The world's changing, bro. It's all right.
Yeah. Okay, so whether or not quantum physics, the implications of the multiverse implies the presence that there may possibly be an alternate universe where the initial conditions make it possible for a flat Earth to exist somewhere.
Right. And even generally the idea that it's a flat universe. So everything that we're experiencing is holographic. I believe in the holographic universe. I think Tabit's idea makes a lot of sense to me. And we can imagine from that idea that anything that we're experiencing is a projection from a flat space, even Mars. Right. So anything, even, and on a fifth, like you're talking about fifth dimensionally, what that can mean is that we're looking at the only world, right, that exists, but it is many worlds. So Mars, any one of these planets, is a different. Are you muted, Vincent? Because I see you talking. Sorry, what are you saying?
So it's a multiverse. It's like all stacked in the same place.
Exactly. It's stacked in one flat Earth.
I remember
flat Saturn, flat Mars.
I remember years ago I was listening to
you just gotta be tuned to it like a radio.
I was listening to a channeler, a guy who claims to be channeling some entity from up high, and he was talking about how reality is basically multidimensional, and then when you're moving through space, you're actually moving through multiple dimensions, and so you're actually crossing into dimensions just through motion, as well as emotion, as well as all the frequencies you access. So you're able to like, if you do it through will, hypothetically, you can control the dimensional place that you'll end off in. You could go through time.
This is a major reason why they're obsessed with subatomic particle physics as well as astronomy, because understanding orbital sp2 orbitals and the frequency of the orbital tells you everything you need to know about eclipses, I guess you say, but the alignment, they're like, oh, this is so close, the Earth is so close to Mars for the one time in 26 years.
That's the time that we're able to it maths up. It maths on you. It maths so hard on you.
Yeah, well, I find this interesting because so many people that are freaked out about flat Earth, and so many people that are, on either side, right? Like people that think that the globe is a lie, and the globe people that think that flat Earth is crazy. Both of them should really be talking to each other more, right?
Yeah. Well, because the gravity wells are just they're all their own isolated causal fields, essentially, right?
Well, maybe, but they might influence each other.
Well, yeah, they do interact because we're in the same bubble, essentially. So they, because they're pretty. It's like people listening to the radio on the beach. If you get the radios close enough, they'll start to overlap. Like,
yo, can I ask you guys something? So no, please. This is a good question. So there's 4 of us here. So let's say we're all privy to this idea that reality is downstream from consciousness, and it just having a will of its own and maintaining it and being aligned with it in mind, body, and soul will make it happen. So what if the 4 of us collectively aligned with one single thing to happen, and using our intention and aligning with it, whatever it may be that we collectively decide on? Do you think we can make it happen?
You mean like Kamala Harris being president?
Like a collective wish?
Maybe, yeah, like a collective wish or a collective manifestation. You know,
That's how covenants work.
should we leave it to
We
the
can try
chat?
it.
Should we tell the chat to decide for us what we should what us four mystics powerful
Bitcoin
mystics-
1K.
Bad idea.
You want to get a no? You don't think so? We shouldn't fuck with this. You
I
don't.
think
I
you
mean,
should
we
always
could do
I
it.
feel like-
Don't
I
let
feel
them
like-
determine it. That's
Oh,
all.
a couple things on that. So one, the 5 monkey paw thing. Like you always got to be careful when you ask for something because
The consequences. It's
So we have to be
equal and
careful.
opposite.
Yeah.
It's an equal and opposite transaction. So it's got to
Right.
have.
What's the threefold debt?
and everything has
It's
polarity.
the full metal alchemist rules. It's a trade. You know,
Trade
like
every-
brothers.
yeah.
you might have to sacrifice something that you're not ready to sacrifice. You know,
your arm in your brother's body,
and that happens in a lot of magic.
So are we
circles.
saying we are so satisfied with life or that we don't have? We feel collectively that we don't have to utilize this
I
intentional.
try
magic?
very hard to only ask
I-
for God's will, right? Because
That's the thing. It's hard to want things, you know, when you don't have, when you're not a materialist, when you're not someone who covets goods.
See, yeah,
It's like
exactly.
it's just-
If that's the consensus, then I'm so with that. If you want to let this go, I'm totally okay with that.
You know, like
I'm
my
totally
my
okay with-
my wish would be to contribute to collective human expansion, collective human enlightenment.
I mean, if you're already
collective
doing that, though,
healing.
if we're all already
I'm doing my best. I'm doing my
Yeah,
best.
That's
yeah.
the other.
Yeah.
That's the other.
It's a
thing.
life. It's a life's
Whatever-
work. You know, and
whatever
it's not
you-
like
that's the other-
profitable.
because we
whatever
share
you-
that.
Whatever you
I-
will to do is not enough that you will it. I think works. I mean, faith without works is dead. So
I agree. I agree.
you should be spending time endeavoring to do the things that we're all wishing to happen.
I agree.
Maybe that's why.
Yeah,
we
I like
talk
the
to each
God's
other,
will,
you know?
not my will thing. I think that's appropriate here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
channeling. You're channeling higher purpose, higher.
Yeah,
quote,
because I
unquote,
mean,
higher.
you know, but the thing is that desire does move mountains. You know, like there's no denying that a lot of the great things that humans have done required that fucking psychopathic crazy person that wanted too much and that wanted too much power and had consequences. It's part of the growing up of humanity, you know. And so eventually maybe we will all get over it and we'll all be like, yo, we're neurologically good. We're good. We don't need all this shit. We don't need all the stimulus and all the fucking drug. We're auto alchemical like gold.
Transmute.
Yeah, but
transmute. You could transmute whatever
Let's go.
negative shit you throw at me. I will figure out how to make it.
The thing is that-
imagine we're
the thing
all
is, if we're
Pleiadian
all- if
Nordic
we're
light
all-
beings like that. What happens when we can control each other's minds? Like, does it get to a certain point where everyone's an Ubermensch? Isn't that kind of dangerous? Because
Exactly. That's what I was saying. Yeah, it's a dangerous world.
If everyone can
I
make
think
their
the
wishes
thing is,
come
look,
true,
if
everyone
we're
can
all-
destroy the world.
If we're all Ubermensch,
this is why
if
we
we're all
fluoride in the
no,
water.
the thing is that what we can do if we're at that point, then we can intelligent life, transcendent life spreads. It creates more, and it combats entropy. It does all that. So give people
It
planets.
balances out. All right.
But give people planets. You know, give people they're basically demigods at that point. Give them their own environment to form, to terraform, and then they can spread life throughout the cosmos that's intelligent and that can contribute to the greater good or whatever it may be, you know. I mean, I may be ambitious, but I'd rather that than everyone destroy themselves because everyone's transcendent. Like I agree that it's a possible path, but
that's
like,
kind of what it looks like. It seems like you're going to get to a point where a lot of people could lose the essence of being so that they can become just happiness machines, like we were saying.
the thing is, we're
But the other
already at
side
that
is-
point.
It's
We've
dangerous. It is
people have been at
It's
that
happening
point
now, yeah.
People have been
10
at that
years.
point for people who have been warning us for thousands of years that this is there. So people have been at that point for a
Okay,
long.
so-
The moment we ate that fruit,
I
people
guess
were
we're
there.
basic. This is the final. I mean, the logical conclusion is rapture or Ragnarok or whatever you want to call it.
Ragnarok is
Rainbow Road from Rainbow Bright.
Armageddon. The thing is that it's Armageddon.
second
It's
coming,
the forces.
the second
Look,
coming.
the forces of demons and gods, at the very least, exist in our minds, in our imaginations, in our frequency, and so there'll be demons and angels fighting through us in the upcoming, well, all our lives really, but it might ramp up into physicality more so.
First
I
of all, I
wouldn't say
want to be.
mockumentary. I think
I just
every
want to
year
say
we should just do it.
when we talk about these things, we're not talking about like the end of the world, and we're not trying to fear monger. I think generally we believe it's a new Genesis type deal, not necessarily like a like the world's gonna end in fire and brimstone explicitly. I believe.
Yeah,
it's
I
more
kind
like
of believe in the end of history and the end of time is not the end of the world. Per se,
Yeah, I think
but
I think we're more reaching we're gonna reach a transcendent state.
Yeah,
more so than a
which might be scary. Don't get me wrong, it's still scary. That's fucking scary too, because they're both singularities. Ultimately, like, if we're talking
I think that's the thing. It's all gonna come to the point of like the worst possible outcome and the best possible outcome,
so
right up to the finish line, and then it'll like collide.
Yeah.
And
here's how I've been thinking about it actually. So if you think about, because we talked about the multiverse idea earlier, right? Like you can imagine that a lot of universes don't work out. Like a lot of universes just destroy themselves, like Donnie Darko. They're just like boom, 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 gone. Some universes,
the dark multiverse.
Yeah, but there's also ones that hit Omega Point. And I think we could say Alpha Point is the beginning of time, Omega Point is end of time. But Omega Point doesn't necessarily mean apocalyptic. It could mean, like we're talking about the singularity, where Moore's Law, things get so close together, we lose the labyrinth of lines in between the photons until things are so perfectly condensed and yet organized that we hit from chaos to grace, right? That's the Omega Point. And that can happen in some timelines. Maybe it already happened in one timeline. Maybe in ancient Sumeria, some freaking guy was like, woo, and like
it probably happened to Superman at some point.
You know what's fucked up though?
Two times.
What's the problem with all this? Because you're describing pure light. You're describing good shit. And
organized light.
For as much organized light there is, that means there's organized darkness.
Totally.
You know, like
yeah, and so, but that's kind of the vibe of this horizon point that I'm talking about. Because you imagine that maybe in ancient Sumer it happened where someone got to the point that they were able to recreate moment on non-causally what reality they wanted to without technology even, and that was the beginning of being outside of time. Okay, but there's other realities where that didn't happen. I think most realities, until you get to maybe the 20th century, you probably have people building technology. Yeah, that's a spiral off. That's a breakaway.
Yeah, well, that's in Marvel. They have that timeline. The Deadpool, the timeline police, where they regulate the different timelines.
Like
I think that's pretty real.
6 to 10-year-old kids are thinking about.
The thing is, okay, think of it this way.
They have to be because they're going to be the police.
Think of it this way, like you know the Deadpool movie. They have that multiverse police or like the timeline police. Well, these different timelines that they canceled are different mythological structures that would have failed us in the long run. And so they get canceled because the message that they have isn't sustainable and adequate to maintain over time.
100% I agree with the ones that spiral out of control. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about one where an ascended master became a god. Right?
Yeah.
I'm talking about a reality.
I agree.
That's actually it's actually an Omega Point in a good way, and that's the thing that could happen again. And let's say it did. Let's say that technologically we don't just need the Babylon ascended master. Maybe in the 20th century, you know, in multiple timelines, we start hitting points where flying saucer tech and black star reality is opening up, and that's our breakaway civilization. But at a certain point, it gets to the point where in any timeline around the 21st century, it seems like either you sink or swim. Either you hit singularity or you don't. And that's what I'm calling the horizon point, the multiversal horizon point. And that's what this curve is. Because maybe the first point was Sumer, maybe this point was 1930s, maybe this is 2030s, maybe this is 2070s. But at a certain point, you're kind of inevitably going to hit the horizon point of singularity, and we're near it.
So we could even be experiencing converging timelines right now.
Yeah, we are.
This is why we're so chaotic, you know. Like this is why when you become self-aware, that's a convergence point of timelines. Think about it, because when you're most self-aware, you're
scaring Vincent.
I'm sorry, you have the most potential to create timelines, right? When you're self-aware. So I think we are experiencing.
Vincent's having major realizations too. I can see it.
It's also converging consciousnesses too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, converging consciousness, because we're all realizing what we truly are, and then when we realize the potential of that, that's literally timelines collapsing in on itself. Because as we speak, as we're talking about this, as we are more self-aware of this, as the people listening to this, we are literally collapsing timelines upon timelines upon timelines, and becoming
But there are the kinds that Vincent was bringing up, which are the Donnie Darko ones that shatter off and become nothing. And then there's the self-awareness, the ones that become able to choose exactly what moment follows the next moment without causality.
Right.
Boom, 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 boom.
Dude.
But you know, the thing is that's part of, you know, like the thing is the entire point of our hyper adaptive
mythological structuring is to allow us to continue to maintain this timeline and to not let it end in absolute anti-life.
That's
like
a service.
Superman embodies this because he literally gets help from his version of himself that's 2,000 years in the future.
We have to keep it going. We have to keep it going so other people can experience this. So other people can
I agree. It's like the anti-life fucking sentiment that like our way or else anti-life is just the most mind-boggling thing, because they're literally going like anti-Nazi, anti-genocide, and we're gonna like misuse these terms, and if we don't get our way, everyone gets genocided, and we want anti-life. And like I see this all the time. There's people who are just so anti-reality that they will literally like militarize themselves to the point of becoming almost villainous, and like they'll be like, "Oh, I'm entering my evil stage or my bad
fuck
stage."
That.
Like,
no, but maybe that's a part of it. Maybe that's a part of the journey, because the hero's journey is all about transformation.
Yeah, but that's not shadow integration. It's letting your shadow consume you.
You're right. You're right.
They're literally going like, "I'm literally going to become everything I hate," instead of just mastering myself and like becoming useful.
You're right. There has to be some, not like a school or an institution.
They lack discipline. They have no real.
But you know what? I will say this. This is where I give a shout out to my like breadcrumbs, which is like the Kabbalion. The Kabbalion was, for me, I read it at just the right time. Like I read a whole bunch of other self-help books, and they were very useful and they were very clever for my like mind, but when I read the Kabbalion, and I know it's not a real sacred text or whatever, but it's a good handbook. It's a good it's like the Boy Scouts handbook for like.
Hey man, if it's sacred to you, that's what matters, okay?
But it worked for me, like it really helped me like
that's
see.
What matters.
I was like, okay. And then that allowed me to like, because I always made music and I always fucked around with sound frequencies, but that allowed me to like see like the parallels between light and sound frequencies. And then I suddenly realized it's like, oh, okay, I can edit video and I get the access now. Like I get how I could make these parallel dimensions like fit together as one thing. And that was all spiritual. That to me, that was like fundamentally spiritual, because spirit is like what? Like living conscious light and sound, right? Like a frequency, a rhythm,
sonoluminescence,
a jiggle. It's a jiggle. We're all a separate jiggle. Like everyone's their own little.
We're all just little lines wiggling.
Yeah, exactly.
Stacked onto itself into complexity.
I mean, It also seems like towards that idea of singularity. This Antarctica is starting to become green again, and we're seeing like what it could be like under the ice. What do you think about that? Do you think we're gonna find anything cool, like civilization wise? Are you a big believer in this ancient Antarctica under the ice cities or something?
Well, here's what was proven.
I mean,
the flood was proven. Okay, the flood destroyed everything, and we know that. So you could look at like you literal geographical scarring.
That's the thing, like a snow, like mass snow, like an ice age. Is a flood. It's just a frozen flood. It's all water. It's frozen. So yeah, of course.
Desert. That's another weird thing. So Antarctica is a desert. It's a frozen flood that hasn't rained enough ever since. So it's a desert technically, because the amount of water that falls, or the amount of snow that falls every year is so little that it means that it's essentially a desert, right? Which I find interesting. We're talking about an ice-covered desert. But it's also, I mean, at the center of the, you know this, the UN Antarctica room. It has the green triangle. Oh man, UN Antarctica Treaty. What do I gotta do here? Help me out. Room. Island.
Every time I hear Antarctica, I always think of Admiral Byrd. Shout out to that crazy kook.
I mean, that Admiral Byrd.
Holy fuck.
I feel like Admiral Byrd doesn't get talked about properly. So they're like, oh, he went down there kind of like just for the heck of it. No, the military sent him. And they act like, oh, it was just this novel trip that he flew in. He came out with a wild story. No, he had a bunch of people with him and military equipment. I mean, they had heavy artillery. And he was one of a few people that survived this. There were other people that died, like planes that were shot down, allegedly.
There was a battle.
Yeah. So the fact that we don't talk about the battle aspect of it enough, and we make it sort of this, harebrained fisherman story, Seems crazy.
No. Well, I don't know. I mean,
there's
debunkers always going to be for stories like this. And the shit he claimed, like he was escorted by UFOs. He came into contact with like Pleiadians, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like Nordic white-looking aliens. This is what I learned from the Y-Files video, and I like Y-Files. Honestly, I like.
You keep saying that.
I do.
My dad watches the Y-Files. I set my dad up to watch that show.
It's a
good for you.
Good show.
Yeah, I like the fish. I like
Parasite TV.
Right.
Yeah, I like Midnight Broadcast. That's a good one.
I really like this picture here. It's talking about ancient breakaway civilizations, and it shows you some examples. You know, it's got the Nazca skull. It's got the Croatian one. Yeah, that's right. There's a bunch of breakaway civilization stuff, and I like this idea that the breakaway civilization looks similar. It seems like every one of them is anti-human. It's very urban. It's very natural, like refined to a point of saying that this society. No, it's not alien.
You don't think it's alien? I mean,
it's Ubermensch. Have you ever mentioned? That's my point. It's so this idea. Hold on.
Right.
When we say something's alien, we mean foreign, or I don't think it seems foreign. It seems very much at the omega point of evolution, where you think you can't learn anything else. These are people that have discovered and know everything they think they'll ever learn. There's nothing new to learn for them.
That's it.
Yo, Andreas.
Their shapes are all cymatic, by the way.
Yeah,
well, yeah, it could look. It could be. You know.
Wait, Chris got to try to add a question.
No, I want to ask you guys something. Do you guys ever like wonder truly about your like cosmic lineage, like, you know, in terms of like, I don't know, I guess like past lives or something? Like, you know, what if you were in a past life an alien and you did some dark shit? You know, like what if you were of dragon energy? Wouldn't that be the precursor to reptilian energy? And then you became.
You know, which aliens raped my ancestors?
I'm just saying, like sometimes I wonder about it.
Which ancestors of yours raped your other ancestors, Andrew?
I know that the Spaniards visited the Philippines and went to Puerto Rico, but I want to know who gangbanged then.
There's that too.
The thing is, don't forget, people gangbang each other inside their own civilizations as well. And so,
yeah. So you want to talk about the Cordoba Caliphate? You want to talk about what it was like in Spain at that time? I mean, I get the feeling that
people were fucking each other.
Vampires make more vampires, but you gotta. I think that's a good. There's something about human trauma and suffering that perpetuates human trauma and suffering.
The
more you know about it, the more you can probably stop that.
The draconian
cycle.
Like that. That's just. I think that there's a. You know, like the mass rape of cultures and of peoples is probably ritualistic, and it's all about power dynamics and this sort of use of, you know, mass, I guess, humiliation ritual sort of thing to emasculate and to
and the cat's out of the bag. It's not even a big secret.
Systemic.
Yeah.
It's not even a big, like, we all knew this until we had a feeling because we hear rumors, you know, especially
it's been like decades that people have been talking about trauma programming through, you know, cults and like power, like elite cults that use this sort of stuff. And now
honestly, it's really reflecting Rome. It's literally like, you know, the only way you would really know about this is through like mass leisure. And when things are going so good for these people, they let their leisure leak. They let normal people in. You know, they're suddenly what could go wrong?
If you look at any culture, that's just how it is. Every single culture,
civilization.
If you look at Japanese culture, if you look at Chinese culture, if you look at most, if not all of them, they all had child sacrifices. They all had fucking some weird sexual stuff, some subjugation of certain people, some racism, some this,
animal
some
shit.
But do we pretend that these societies were voluntarily choosing this? I mean, it's
Andreas, you were talking.
Damn.
Too powerful.
You were talking about the omega point in. You were talking about the omega point in these different civilizations that they all reached, and that could be that they're all accessing this sort of higher state of knowledge and understanding. But the thing is that they don't actually have the means to process it properly because they're still immature as a developing developing species, as a developing human. You know, like we're 4,000 years ago, 5,000 years, 10,000 years ago, who knows how long ago. Like we were probably still pretty savage, and so we could only perceive the divine through the savage lens, and we could only perceive the source of all information through the savage lens. And so we were still brutal, and we still had all these backwards perceptions and beliefs, and they were reflected in the gods that we believed in the way that we manifested the divine, because it was all filtered through that ego contamination, that reptilian still lingering.
But however, there was always one example. Every once in a while, every age, there was always an avatar, right, who comes up in history and just changes everything, like Jesus or Buddha. You know, like these were just dudes who just popped out.
But they were. The thing is, they might have still been humans. You know, like Jesus.
Yeah,
may have been.
I think these were
Jesus may have. Jesus may have been the paragon of goodness in all his incarnation. He could be.
Yeah.
But have you heard the anime conspiracy? The anime
all
conspiracy
the stories
about
are still within
the cat faces.
So, like, the idea is that
cuter and cuter and cuter.
Exactly. As humans evolve, they're getting less and less rough. They're getting bigger and bigger foreheads and wider eyes. And that perhaps the Japanese, who probably won the war with the Third Reich and the Hyperboreans and went to the Breakaway civilization in one of the timelines, that they've been building the. We're talking about how the cartels and everyone around the world love anime. That anime is showing the future. That people will, like, the world in the future will look like Japanese people from anime. We're always like, why don't people in anime look like Japanese people? Well, because they look like you in the future, right?
It could be that the nukes caused a sort of creative portal that just unlocked creativity and just allowed people to fucking channel so much.
Did you see that?
Same for the U.S.
Like, now that Trump became president, like, white people start slowly appearing on the photograph in the future.
Yeah.
That's
no.
I'm
I saw that. That was
I
didn't think that was funny. I was just like, whatever. And then I posted it. Okay. I didn't know
I'm currently having a big argument that there might be a connection between anime and MK Ultra.
Like, of course there is, yeah. I mean, so one of the things, 100%. If you
oh my god, I was just called. Look, I was just called crazy for like 2 hours by one of the very serious.
The Japanese never surrendered their samurai swords, right? Like, so they never actually officially surrendered. And when they did the false surrender, they did it to a Japanese fake American flag with extra stars. I think it had 53 stars, the number that Obama references, and it has the stars upside down. It's like the wrong number of lines. So they never surrendered to the American flag, and they never actually gave up their swords. And the fact that they're associated with, like we said, the Yakuza, that there are these corporations that probably are part of this breakaway civilization. Well, Japan has all this technology that's just completely, after World War II, it's just completely insanely ahead.
It's Cold Wars. Like all war is Cold Wars. Cold War is mimetic warfare.
But like, you have to also remember 1940s, 1950s technology is ahead of what we have now. Because like Lockheed Martin, they were talking about how we're gonna have anti-gravity crafts that go to the moon and back 6 times a day, and all of a sudden 57, they're just like, stop talking about this. We don't want anyone to know about this.
Because the military industrial complex.
They were able to
knowledge is power.
Instead of having to use standard propulsion, they were able to change the state of an object, like tune its frequency in space and time, as if it was just like a different frequency that they could just switch, and you just blip.
Futurama might have explained it, because their spaceship, the way that it works is that instead of moving through reality, they move reality around it.
Yeah.
So they actually move the entire universe
like a radio.
Instead of moving the spaceship itself. So they
That's how I learned the pole dance.
Yep. Jesus.
You move the world around you.
Well, we're pretty hard deep into that breakaway civilization talk, but we're also near the 2-hour mark. So if you guys
can we have a third hour?
I gotta get my life together. But we could do it. We could do another show soon, especially because I'm gonna start doing early birds more. And if you can do mornings ever, Vince, you're always welcome for early birds. That would be great.
What time is it at usually?
Early.
How early?
I don't know. Because you're on the East Coast. It's not that early for the East Coast. But
it's like noon East Coast usually.
Oh, really? That's not that bad.
We could bring it back. We could bring it lower in the morning. Whenever you guys want. I'm going to start, because I'm going to be Easter than you will pretty soon. I'm going to be so East will be Eastern. So we'll figure it out. Here's the deal. We're about to be thrust into the singularity. Our world's about to be shattered. But also the cool thing is that causality will be shaken. We'll be able to choose what moments come after the next moments, and I think we'll be able to realize our dreams. So should we be more careful? Yes, but we should also remember that we're in power over our nightmares. That's my pitch, basically.
Yeah.
But what about you? What do you guys got? You got something to say?
I think one interesting thing is that this is a theory. It's not even a theory. It's an intuition, I guess. I think like whatever you're naturally good at, that's probably what you took from your past life. You know, like New Game Plus. It's like, oh yeah, you know, it's like you get to take one thing with you. So embrace that because you know your past life fought hard for that. So whatever you're just naturally good at, whether it's arguing, playing pool, playing basketball, preferably it's not something that could harm people. But if it is harming people, then put some constructive use to it, I guess. I don't know.
That's something also next time we should talk more about is how to get like in touch
Plastic
with your
surgeon.
simultaneous existing past self. Because I'm a big fan of this idea that your past self and all time are different moments happening simultaneously. So you should be wondering what's going on with yourself in the 15th century, right? What is your energy doing there as it's arranged? That's a cool.
It's like The Last Airbender.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that too. Vincent, you want to share?
I don't know. Be good to yourself and love your future self.
We're coming back to you. That was crap. Andrew,
make gifts.
No, that I can tell. You need a second. Andrew, you're gonna go, and then we're gonna go back to Vincent because he's embarrassing himself.
If you're a young American and you care about excitement and your country and the world, join Space Force.
Heck yeah. You're the kind of guy I would actually see at Space Force. They'd be like,
yeah.
I'm too old, I think. Plus, I got kids. I don't want to get.
They need old people there.
They want your kids on Mars. Gosh. All right. Vincent, take 2.
I don't know, man. Like, fucking reach higher. Be critical. Stop fucking letting political parties just dominate your thinking and tell you what to think about other political parties and other people. Like, people are humans. They're not ideologies. And they sound like ideologies because they're mouthpieces for them. But behind that shit is a person. And that's real. So love them, love yourself, and fucking be good to yourself. And yes, make gifts for your future self. You know, they'll thank you.
Right? Yeah.
And go to space.
Also go to space. Space time. It's happening now.
This is what we need.